A dark place in a purple hue. A spider slowly began to crawl down from the tree. The guy watched him from behind the tree. This is Fang Tian, also called a hacker. He is currently on a mission to kill a shadow spider for which a monetary reward has been announced. The purpose of the quest is to collect materials, namely the level 20 spider poison that can cause paralysis. Fang Tian completed 08 with 10, and if he completes all of them, then he will receive the reward, namely experience 240, silver coins 1000. Taking out the knife that is near his chest, he shouts that he has been living in this game world for 12 years. 12 years ago he was invited to the Chimera and lived here doing different tasks with rewards. Attacking the spider, he keeps saying that there are many strange personalities in this world, races because of which you can die at every turn. Similar magical creatures are given quests and the hunters get rewarded by completing the quests. Therefore, they are always on the cusp of death. They found themselves facing each other waiting to see who would attack first. After cutting the spider's paw, he said that he was used to this kind of life. Suddenly, an urgent message appeared in front of Fang Tian's face, saying that the hacker was quitting the game. Fan was puzzled, as he was ready to finish the fight. After stabbing the spider with his knife again, he hit the stone wall. Jumping to the floor, he began to run away. A golden circle appeared in front of him. He put his hand on top of this circle, which had blue-colored signs on it. These signs signaled that it was time to come out. He hung in the air. He was instructed to leave the game, which Fang Tian had been doing for 112,129 hours and 23 minutes. He would disappear from the game, ending the fight. For 12 years, he never left the game world. The memories of the real world became blurred in his mind. A blue bright light appeared in the room. This was Fang Tian's return to the real world. He was shocked that he had to come back here. Walking down the corridor, he said that these buildings were very similar to the game buildings. But why did he suddenly need to come out of it? His arm was wounded. The paralyzing spider venom was only now starting to take effect. Something had to be done quickly. Rewrapping his arm with the torn white cloth, he told himself that this spider really was as nasty as he had been told. He heard someone standing behind him. Reacting quickly, he turned around and put a knife to the throat of the person behind him. It was Uncle Hubbard. Uncle Hubbard was his contact in the game. He constantly gave him various tasks while he was in the game. Hubbard lit a cigarette, held out his hand with the letter, and hit Fan lightly on the head with it. An assignment for Fan. With surprise, he asked if it was in the game. Uncle replied that it was a special mission, so he could use it as an evaluation mission. He added that he wanted Fan to be near this person. Fong opened the envelope and started reading the contents. It was information about the man. This mission is quite long, so no one should reveal Fan. Hubbard put his hand on Fan's shoulder and with a serious face, he warned that including that he couldn't use his abilities in the real world, nor could he use his method to enter the game. Suddenly, Fan had a flame in his hand, and beside him he held the envelope Hubbard had just given him. Hubbard got angry about this and gave him a slight fist to the head to remind him that he had told him not to do this. He told Fan that his clothes looked like cosplay and were attracting a lot of attention, so it needed to be dealt with. Hubbard beckoned him to come outside. Opening the doors, they stepped outside. Fan's eyes were blinded by the light. He wasn't used to seeing in the real world. He asked Hubbard if it was exciting to come face to face with the unknown. Fan had been in that world since he was a little boy, so he was unfamiliar with everything, and he had to get used to it. Hubbard said that he, as his mentor, would give him 2 pieces of advice to make him better at the task. First, when Fan is embarrassed, he should keep a big smile on his face. Secondly, the uncle began to say this with a serious face. When he would look for a girl, make sure to look for a girl with big breasts. Fan asked why he wanted a girl with big breasts, and Hubbard replied that smart women are terrible because they have big brains, not breasts. He replied with a smile on his face that he had written down his advice. Hubbard told him to get to the task at hand. The guy took a framed picture, with 2 guys in it and started looking at it. There's been a lot of unusual disturbances at our law firm lately, and the employees are tense about it. The girl said to the guy sitting at the table. She said that the kid had been found, thus shocking the guy. The guy asked where he was. The girl said that the Chansey Security Bureau had found the trail. The guy clenched his hand into a fist, angrily asked if it was in the game, and firmly told him to take it with him. Police station. There is a guy sitting in it. It was Fang Tian. His thoughts are filled with a man, the chief of District 3 District T27. A few hours ago, Hubbard told Fan that he could help him blend into the den of bandits under the guise of a merchant. But he must remember that he was stolen by vagrants 10 years ago. Tan Rankin has to pick Fan up, warning him that this man is not so simple. He reminded Fan that he must not act rashly until further notice. Fan tilted his head and said that this time the task was much more difficult than killing shadow spiders. The girl guided the guy to the door behind, which is the same child Fang Tian. He knocked on the door. Hubbard walked over and opened it, while Fong sat with a train of thought about the situation. A guy walked into the room, followed by a girl who was his assistant. Fong still couldn't believe that this time his target was the commander of District 3T27, Tang Ran. Tang Ran looked at Fan in bewilderment and asked what had happened to him, to which the girl replied that he had been beaten by vagrants. Tang Ran gently reached out to touch Fan, but he turned away. He decided to reassure him by calmly telling him that there was no need to be afraid of him as he was his father's friend. Tan Ran had seen Fan when he was very young and offered to go with him. Fan agreed. Tang Ran's house. It was an ordinary house, no different from any other house. They entered the room. Tang Ran said Fan could stay here to live. Fong took the picture frame, with two guys in it. It was Tan Ran and Fan's father. Fan asked if they had found his father, hoping for a positive answer. Suddenly they heard the voice of a girl peeking out from behind the door to their room. She kept asking for the boy, if he was handsome, if he was tall. Tang Ran ordered her to calm down and not to touch Fan Tan. He warned that it was his lovely daughter, who would introduce Fan here, and he went to prepare food for the boys. The girl stood at the entrance to the room. Fan stared at her. She was very pretty and cute. The girl came closer to the guy and embarrassed him. She said that since they will live in the same house, they should exchange formalities for a better life in the future. The guy introduced himself by putting two fingers on his left shoulder, showing a sign of greeting. The girl only laughed from that and said he was funny. She didn't even expect Fong to know about this sign. She added that it was similar to the movement of professional NPC assassins. She introduced herself in response, saying her name was Tang Chang and she was a magician, putting 3 fingers up to her forehead. Fong said that she had a very powerful profession and asked in surprise what NPC meant. Tang Chang didn't answer his question, but lightly took his chin to look at Fan more closely. After evaluating him, she said that he looked good, about a 9 out of 10, but seemed shy. She added that Fan looked like her older brother. She excitedly exclaimed that since they had already met, now she would take him to one exciting place. They arrived in the city. Tang Chang dragged Fan by the hand into a building. It was an internet cafe called Tai Long. People were sitting behind computer screens. Once they went inside, they saw a spacious hall where customers were behind screens wearing black helmets. Fang Tian asked what was special about this place, to which Tang Chang replied that it was an internet cafe. It was a chimera game. It was very popular right now. You can only enter the game here if you have a helmet. It's insanely interesting. Some guy repeated the name of the game and said that the name was the same as the world he was in. Fang Tian looked at Tang Chang and said that he had a fight today, so let her show him how to play. Before she could reply, she heard someone calling her name. It was some guy who was heading in their direction. He started asking Tang Chang where she was going because today was the competition between the chemistry and physics class. He started complaining that the chemistry class had called for reinforcements and had already defeated 3 of their people. Xing Ting introduced a guy to Fang Tian. It was her classmate Luo Jiangbing. The guys said hello to each other. Tang Chang picked up the helmet for the game. She told Fang Tian that she would deal with this guy now, but for now, let him wait for her for a while. Fong calmly agreed. While Tang Chang was putting on the helmet, Luo stood behind her and supported her, saying that the pride of the physics class depended on her. The guy Tang Chang was playing with was already wearing the helmet. He asked which mode he should turn on, basic or peak. Tang Chang replied that he should go for peak. Victory or death for that matter. The guy who was determined to win answered without a problem. The fight began. Luo happily said that they had a good chance of winning in peak mode. Fang Tian asked why he was so sure. The latter replied that if there was a base mode, it was possible that the opponent's equipment would be stronger than Tang Chang's. At that time, the players were already doing battle. In peak mode, they have the same points to allocate skills. Weapons are balanced using attribute points, which is more fair. Luo said they've already lost 3 times. And if they lose in 5 games, they would have to pay for another class to go to an internet cafe for a month. And they didn't want to do that. To which Fang Tian was surprised, since if money is involved, they get serious. On the battlefield in the fenced circle, there were 2 opponents. Both her and he were serious about winning. Suddenly, Fang Tian realized that he knew this arena where the fight was taking place right now. He seemed to have lived in this world. He was surprised after all. The guys were still with him while they were in 2 places at the same time. Suddenly, a fireball from one of the opponents flew in. Fang Tian was even more surprised. Fireballs could be made by mages of level 25 and above. It was Tang Chang who attacked her opponent with them. The guy put up his protective dome, mockingly telling her that it turns out she was a star mage. Tang Chang started aiming her vision at him. She began to say that the continuous attack had only knocked out a quarter of his health, and his defense was not weak. Her magic would need time to recover. Her opponent began to taunt her, saying that she lacked mana. He cried out that it was his turn to attack and started running at Tang Chang. She confidently reminded him that she was a mage and could draw mana from the air. The girl swung her magic weapon at the ice while shouting ice staff. The ice shattered. The guy's leg began to freeze. Everyone who was supporting Tang Chang started shouting in her favor that in the ice ring, the target would slow down and freeze. Someone in the crowd warned her that the ice staff could only be used at a short distance and required calmness and precise calculations. Someone shouted to her that she was his idol, and finally this time they had one. Fang Tian said that Tang Chang was a genius mage who always used high-level skills. The guy still had the same defense and went into battle. Fang immediately noticed that something was not good here and the guy was up to no good. Tang Chang's opponent had a red color appearing from his body. Fang Tian speculated that it might be a wild charge. The opponent was furious and eager to finally win. Suddenly, his strength increased a lot and his icy leg was freed. Tang Chang didn't expect that the ice spikes didn't work. The guy started running at her in a rage. Tang Chang immediately reacted and put up a shield in the form of a dome formed around her, but it didn't help her. Her opponent struck the shield with her entire body. It immediately shattered and the girl was thrown off. She hit the wall. A message appeared above her head that said she was in a bad condition, namely dizziness. Luo anxiously shouted that it was a wild charge. The guy was able to ignore the ice spikes at such a close distance. Fang Tian became worried and began to wonder if they had lost. What should they do now? Luo was in a panic. He started to say that it's over. Tang is stunned. Now she won't be able to resist the warrior's melee attack. The guy swung at the girl who was lying on the floor in a bad way. It was a fire hammer. Tang Chang lost her life force in the game from the impact. She had to leave the game. The people nearby started praising the winner. Fong was all worried about the girl because she must be in a very bad state. He immediately ran up to her to see if she was okay. The guy Tang Chang was playing with reminded her with a smile that she had lost to him. The score was 4-0. With only one game left, he offered her to finish it. Tang Chang took off her helmet. She put it back and stood up from the table. Fong couldn't understand why she was fine after being injured so badly. The girl started telling everyone to fight. Did they really want to lose to the physics class? She shouted and asked the people around her who would do it. The guys were silent and looked at each other in embarrassment as no one wanted to do it. Tang Chang shouted at everyone that they were just cowards. Fong thought about why the damage they received in the fantasy disappeared when they left it. He told himself that it was none of his business at all, but he should find out for himself what was going on. Fang Tian decided that he should play. Everyone was surprised because no one expected him to do this. Even Tang Chang was not prepared for Fong to say this. She happily took his hand and asked him if he could play. She was very happy about it and told him that he seemed to be doing quite well. The last round was up to him. Fan didn't have time to react before Tang Chang sat him down in the chair for the game. He wasn't sure, so he said he just wanted to try. Tang Chang immediately set about putting the helmet on him. Fong started to tell her to take her time since he had never used one before. Still, she put the helmet on him and he immersed himself in the game. That being the case, he decided to try entering the fantasy through the thing and see what difference it made. Upon entering, he felt the same feeling he had when he entered the game world. Then a red balloon appeared with a message on it that said player information verification. Player data anomaly detected. Data integration begins. Automatic recovery process started. Integration complete. Fan found himself in the game. He was in the air, with the sky around him and what appeared to be a login screen. A message appeared in front of him with a choice between peak and battle mode. Immediately after that, he saw a message that a player-side savage challenged him in peak mode. Fan realized that it was the player who had just fought against Tang Chang. He accepted the challenge. Messages began to disappear from view. A new message appeared, asking him to choose a class: warrior, assassin, or mage. He asked to himself if there were all the skills that could be learned here. He chose an option. Clicking on it, his body was somewhere behind him. Power appeared in his eyes. Suddenly, he received a message saying that player Tang Chang wanted to add him as a friend with a choice to accept the request or decline. Before he could click accept, he received a notification from the evil Tang Chang, telling Fong to choose a skill because the fight was about to start. A message popped up saying that his opponent, player Lalu, has not finished selecting skills. In 20 seconds the battle will start forcibly. Fan decided to choose a skill from the ones he was familiar with and in a hurry. He started clicking on the different skills he could see. The player's skill selection is complete. The battle will begin. Fong began to move to the battle site. It was an arena, a dense forest. The opponent was already standing in the middle of the arena waiting for the battle to begin. He couldn't believe that the battle would take place in a dense forest that wasn't suitable for a warrior. Tang Chang and the others were already watching the game, but Fang Tian was still not in the arena. One of the guys asked why he couldn't be seen, to which Tang Chang replied that since he was an assassin, he would sneak around. She hoped that whatever he did he wouldn't lose. Luo kept saying that a warrior with great strength and defense is the end for a weak assassin, to which Tang Chang reacted by rolling her eyes in his direction. The opponent was in anticipation. He was on alert since so much time had passed and Fan still hadn't shown up. Mentally, he began to guess that he was the assassin. At this time, Fang Tian was behind the trees studying and waiting for the right moment. From his observations, he realized that he was in a defensive stance and looked like an experienced fighter. However, in the jungle arena, an assassin has an advantage over a warrior. He decided to attack. He ran towards his opponent. Fong wanted to come up from behind and stab him in the throat, but he missed. He didn't expect to miss as he was sure he would hit the target. His opponent noticed him. Fan fell to the ground and didn't realize what was happening or why he couldn't hit him. The guy took a swing at Fan, but Fan managed to put up a Gogness shield that was able to keep him from the first hit. As his opponent hit the ground, flames of fire began to fly off to the sides. He swung and shouted the name of his weapon, namely the Hammer of Wind. A circle of strong wind formed around him as he swung the hammer. Fan was tense. He didn't know what to expect. He tried to run away from his opponent. At this moment, he thought about why this feeling hasn't happened since he entered this game. With a rush of strong wind, he was flung away. His life force had become exactly half, while his opponent had quite a lot of it. Fong didn't understand what was happening to him, why he couldn't fight. His opponent realized that Fong was not new to this if he chose to be an assassin. He added that although the jungle arena is a great place for assassins to fight, but a warrior always defeats an assassin. Swinging his hammer, he kept saying that he didn't want to waste time, so he decided to end it quickly. Fong was ready to defend himself against him. Remembering that his life force was much less than his opponent, he was starting to get upset that he was about to lose. He received a message from the game, suggesting that he turn off free mode so that the player could fight using his skills and abilities on his own. Fan started to read this message, while the opponent was ready to make a strike. The punch happened. Fang Tian's friends who were watching the game at the time realized what had happened and worried that it was the end of the game. Fan looked at the message that suggested to turn on free mode, but he couldn't understand what free mode meant. The opponent almost hit Fong, but he quickly accepted the free mode suggestion. Fong saw that a hammer was about to hit him. He readied his blades. Immediately, he began to defend himself. Our hero fended off the enemy's hammer. The opponent did not expect such actions, because he was sure that now he would finish the game. He started to tell Fan that he blocked his attack. He didn't expect that Fan had turned on free mode. Fong was standing in front of him and was already ready to strike. The jungle arena with the sounds of battle coming from it. Louis said in surprise, "Did Fong really use the free mode?" He started to tell Tang Chang that he had never seen such a thing in a battle. He asked, calling her boss Tang, where did they find this expert? Tang Chang herself couldn't believe what was happening. She didn't know that he was this good. She thought about it. After all, ordinary players would choose a semi-free mode using game programs for convenience. Only advanced players would be able to run the free mode where they used their own skills and abilities. Tang Chang kept thinking about Fang Tian in free mode. The opponent stood in the arena and couldn't understand how the assassin was able to block his attack. Whether he had blocked it because he was using free mode or it was just a coincidence, he was sure that no matter what, even if he had free mode, it was very difficult to control it, so he could still win. Fan threw his knives into the air. He was happy that he could finally move freely. He didn't know there was a free mode. Fan bounced off the ground. In the air, he began to adjust his hands to make it more convenient to strike his opponent. He struck him from behind on his back. He grimaced in pain. The opponent saw that he was actively losing his vitality in the game. He didn't expect Fong to deal so much damage with a normal punch. At this time, Fang Tian ran around him. The opponent angrily started trying to throw punches. Fong only smirked at this and said that these were naive actions. Fang Tian took a leap from the ground. He did a somersault in the air above the guy's head. In doing so, go. He gave him another leg kick to the back. The opponent turned towards Fang Tian, angrily thinking to himself that this guy's body was weird, since his attack didn't work on him. Fan's eyes had nothing but confidence in his actions. He almost put a knife to his opponent's throat. To Fan's mind it occurred to him that he was a loser. His opponent took advantage of the moment while Fan was thinking of something else and picked up the hammer. He shouted a hammer blow. As he swung, he hit Fan. He lost all his strength. There was surprise in his opponent's eyes, as if he didn't expect it. The game was over. The winner was Lu Ha. Everyone who was watching the game started to show their dissatisfaction. How could Fan manage with free mode to lose? Fang Tian started to leave the game. He found himself in the place where he was at the very beginning. He was in the air, with the sky around him and the login system screen. Fang Tian looked at the message that said he had lost. It lived up to his expectations. The game he entered was different from the one he lived in, and he didn't die after death. He thought about the fact that he couldn't train this way. He made the decision to quit the game. A message appeared saying command accepted. Log out. Fan found himself in reality. He took off his helmet. He was surprised as Luo came up to him and said that he did it. He almost won. Fan got a little embarrassed and apologized for losing. Luo cheered him on, saying that he was still very good. Tianxian crossed her arms on her chest and began to speak to Fan in a serious voice. She didn't have time to say anything before she was interrupted by some guy. He said that with the back attack ability, he could win. Everyone turned towards the person who started talking. It was Tianxian's opponent. He inquired why Fan had stopped. Fan first looked at him with a serious expression, after which, he made an awkward look and said that he just wasn't used to it yet. Fang Tian and Tianxian were at the entrance of the house. She told him that he was a good guy. She was already opening the doorknob. Praised that Fong even made Lu Ha sweat. They entered the house. Tianxian immediately saw her father's disgruntled face and started to get a little worried. Tang Ran asked where she took the boy to. The girl was taking off her shoes. She replied that she just took him along to introduce him to the neighborhood, after which, she simply went to her room, leaving Tang Ran and Fang Tian alone. Tang Ran put his hand on the guy's shoulder and said that he had made an appointment with the doctor, so they would go to the hospital together. The guy was surprised and said he wasn't sick. The uncle replied that he has been through a lot and is worried about Fan. Dr. Liao is an expert in psychology, so everything will be fine. Fan began to realize that Tang Ran thinks he was kidnapped by the merchants and they did something bad to him. Uncle's attitude doesn't look like he's pretending at all. Tang Ran looked at Fan and asked if he was okay. Fan started to say that they have been friends for decades and he has a strong faith that is contagious to others. Tang looked at Fan, not understanding why he was acting like this. Tang Ran started talking about when they had been friends for years and he had such a strong faith and ambition that he infected others around him with it. He wanted to continue. They sat across the room from each other. Tan looked down at the floor and thought of what to say. Fong asked him again what he meant, but Tan immediately changed his face to positive and only replied nothing. He told Fan that in order for him to fit into normal life as quickly as possible, his uncle had enrolled him in school. Now he was in the same class as Tianxian, so they would go to school together. Uncle headed for the exit and Fan was left alone in the room. Fong realized that Uncle had just walked away from his question. Images began to pop up in his memories of him sitting on a haystack as a little boy and a grown man next to him. Fan addressed him as Mr. Carl and asked for his father, what kind of man he was. The man answered him that he just had to remember that his father was a hero. Fong watched Tang Ran leave the room and kept thinking about what he was hiding from him. T-26 Commander, 3rd Sector, Tang Ran. Fang Tian arrived with his uncle in the city. In a tall building, they were walking down the corridor. Tang Ran told him not to be nervous. From now on Uncle will be here. There is no more danger. Tang opened the door for him, telling him that Dr. Liao was inside and he would wait for him outside for now. Fang Tian walked into the office. The doctor was standing with his back to him, and he was looking out the window. Luo turned to him with a smile on his face. He introduced himself and said that he was now Fan's psychologist. Dr. Luo started walking towards Fan and Fan sat down in the chair. He was very wary. The doctor took out his notepad and acted positive. He started to say that he had already been briefed about Fan Tian's situation, but before they started, he would need Fan's cooperation. He took out a pen and prepared to take notes while asking questions. Fan sat with his back to the doctor and was prepared for anything that might happen now. His instincts and distrust did not fail him. The doctor had already swung his pen at Fong's throat, but he quickly dodged. Fan Tian began to swing his fists at him. There was a blow. All the papers flew apart. Fan pinned him against the wall and aggressively asked him who he was. Luo tried to break free while saying that the evaluation was over. A hand covered Fan's eyes. After removing his hand, Uncle Hubbard appeared in front of him. Fang Tian was very surprised and at the same time happy to see him. Hubbard said it was his level 37 curse mask. He asked how Fan was able to see it. Fan replied that his instincts were telling him that, which was probably why he realized his uncle had hidden the form. He reminded him that he still wanted to attack him. Hubbard stepped aside saying he accepted his explanation. He sat down across from him in the chair and asked how he was doing. Fan said that wasn't what he wanted to know. He wanted answers to his questions about the game. Hubbard asked him if he had entered the game through the helmet. He hesitated and said it happened faster than he expected. Fan asked him again what was wrong with that game. Hubbard replied that there were 2 ways to enter fantasy. Fan clarified the number from him. The first was the essence, which was the way he entered the game. The second was the virtual access that Fan had experienced. That is, through the helmet. Hubbard said that their plans are currently going well, and their people are making some noise in the 3 zones of the game. Fan's next task is to use the virtual state to explore the game, but he warned that there was one thing: the physical access method should never be discovered. Fang Tian replied that he understood him. The ringing made the phone in his pocket vibrate. Tang Ran picked up the phone. On the other side of the phone they started to tell him that 3 fantasy zones had been attacked. They couldn't find a trace of who did it. Tang Ran was alarmed at the information he heard. He couldn't believe how this could happen. The doors from the office opened. Fang Tian came out, followed by Hubbard in the guise of psychologist Dr. Luo. Tang Ran saw that they had already been released. He told the man he was talking to that he would be back at the station in a minute and quickly ended the conversation. He turned to face them and calmly asked the doctor how Fan was. The doctor replied that treatment takes time, so it was better to come to him every week for a checkup. Besides, he could offer some contact with outside things. He looked at Fan and said that it could be, for example, aids such as games could help him be less wary of strangers. Tang Ran thanked the doctor for the recommendation and for the examination, and they shook hands. When they arrived home, they brought 3 boxes containing new purchases into the house with them. Tang Ran shouted that they had returned. Shin was in the kitchen at this time with a cup in her hands. She happily ran to them in the hallway. Joyfully she started saying that they had bought the newest gaming helmet, just the one she had dreamed of. Tang Ran replied that it was bought for Fang Tian. The doctor said the games could help him not be afraid of strangers. He said he would be away on a business trip for a while, so he asked her to take care of Fang Tian in his place and not to play alone. Shin happily said that she understood him and ran to the boxes of helmets for the game. She called Fang Tian into the room with her. The boy agreed. Shin reminded him again that he was strong yesterday and asked him what level he was at now. Unpacking the helmets, he replied that he had actually only played this game when he was a kid. The girl was surprised by this and once again clarified if he had played the game yet. Fan took his eyes aside and confirmed her words. She started to tell him about the 2 critical hits he had taken in the club and his last move, a back attack. As he did so, the guy anxiously began to think what to answer. He said it was an instinctive reaction in times of danger. Tang Chang looked into his eyes. She put her hand on his shoulder, shouted that Fan might be a brilliant player. Fong had already thought that she would understand, but hearing that, he only laughed awkwardly. The girl started loading. Everything was ready for the game. She asked Fan if he had already booted up, to which he said yes. Eager to start the game, she said she would be waiting for him at the newbie spawn. Fan started to put on his helmet. The 2 of them were both started to immerse themselves in the game. Fang Tian found himself in the very same place, the beginning of the game. His body was floating in the air. In front of him was a notification about which mode to choose, adventure mode or peak mode. He decided to choose adventure mode. In front of him was a notification that the player's history had been detected. Since it was discovered that the game was played without authentication, the player has these options. Option 1, delete the game record and start over. Option 2, start the game at the last save point. Option 3, quit the game. Warning, once the game record is deleted, it cannot be restored. Fang Tian pondered. Can only delete the game record, which is not even meant for Uncle Hubbard. Fong made his choice. He began to disappear from the game. The player chose to delete the game record. Deleting the record, Fan was dissolving into space. The game itself loaded. Data regeneration occurred. Then data integration. A choice had to be made on the player's alias. The guy's voice said his name. A notification popped up that the adventure game mode was officially open. There would be no hints during the game. One had to explore the players on their own. Fang Tian appeared in the game. He was surrounded by the blue ray that brought him here. He began to look around. It was a city that was not much different from the city he lived in before. He stood amongst the houses, stores, and people around him were going about their business, although his characteristics had become like a beginner. But luckily he still had the skills he had practiced over the years. A character trait appeared in front of him. Strength, 7. Dexterity, 9. Intelligence, 6. Stamina, 5. Hidden characteristics, Savvy, 2. Assignable points, 0. He wanted to choose the backstab skill, but before he could press it, someone put a hand on his shoulder. It was Tang Chang, who scared the guy with her sudden appearance. He turned around to look at her. Tang Chang said hello to him. Fang Tian looked at the message that was hanging above his head. It said that player Tang Chang was inviting him to join the team. She said since he was a newbie, she would help him with his training. Fan was surprised at her suggestion. She happily said that they would just fight monsters and beckoned him to follow her. They walked through a green area. There was nature all around. Tang Chang turned to Fan and said to turn him into an expert. There were some important points she wanted to show him so that he could avoid trouble in the future. The two of them looked up apprehensively. Nothing could be seen from above, but there was some dark creature moving imperceptibly in the grass. It was a hair-like monster that was moving towards them. Tang Chang shouted Fang Tian's name, thus warning him of the danger. She began to fight the enemy by launching fiery flames at it before Fang Tian could react and did nothing in response. The monster was tossed aside, its body hitting the ground. Fong watched it and a +5-point accrual message appeared beside him. He saw that he, as a player, had been promoted to level 1 and the points assigned were +3 points. Tang Chang was surprised and said that he really hadn't played any games. Assignable points are the basic characteristics of a player. Each player's starting characteristics are -5, and with each level, the player will get 3 points that can be allocated into some characteristics. There are only 4 types of stats: strength, dexterity, stamina, intelligence. Strength increases attack power and defense. Dexterity increases crit chance, evasion chance and crit boost factor. Endurance increases stamina and defense, and intelligence increases mana and mana regeneration. The girl player said that there were many other ways to improve characteristics besides upgrading, such as equipment, skill upgrades, and so on. Fang Tian looked at his characterization. He asked about the initial characteristics, whether everyone had 5 and why his basic characteristics were different, while Tang Chang, defending herself from her opponent, continued to tell Fang Tian that he needed to get level 10 today so that he could find a mentor to transfer and learn skills. Ice balls flew to the sides, knocking the enemy out of the way. Fang Tian understood. When you meet the basic skill requirements, you can choose a profession. If you find a mentor, he could teach you skills. But after all, O had been living in the illusion for over 10 years, but he had only learned 2 skills in the process: backstabbing and dagger. He turned to Tang Chang. So what she means is that if he becomes an assassin, he can learn all the skills of the assassin system from his mentor? While they were in battle, an envelope flew towards them on wings. They continued to fight their enemy. Suddenly, the girl still noticed the message in front of her. She touched it to open it. Suddenly, a picture of a guy flew out of it, shouting for her help that he wouldn't stand for it. Tang Chang started to speak in an awkward voice to Fang Tian, feeling a little guilty. She was going to help raise him to level 10 to find him a mentor in the main city to change professions, but she was asked to help. Fong questioned her if level 10 would be enough to find a mentor. She said that basically, to supplement the level, you need some money and meet the characteristic requirement. They looked at Fang Tian's level count to see what level he was at now. It was level 7. The girl was surprised by this. She pointed at the monsters they were currently fighting and said that they would give him enough material to complete the quest, and he would also get extra experience points. In that case, why don't he go to the tailor store in the village and take the quest to expand his inventory? Fong opened his inventory to see what was in it. The girl answered him that it wasn't a difficult task, but it would be time-consuming. But all the necessary materials were already typed. She ran about her business and shouted after Fong to take the task at the tailor store and she would come back for him tomorrow. Fang Tian went back into battle again. The sky is sunny. There are birds flying above the city. Fang Tian was already walking through the city and was saying to himself that it was not convenient to fight without a dagger, so he should look at the task Tang Chang was talking about. He saw a sign with scissors on one of the buildings and decided that this was the place he was looking for. He walked inside. There was a man standing behind the counter cutting fabric. It was the owner of the tailor store, Kong. Fong started to speak to him, asking if this was the place to get an assignment. The owner put the things in one pile wrapped in cloth. He started to answer Fan's question. saying that he seemed to have come prepared. He had all the materials he needed, which meant he would give him another assignment. In front of Fang Tian's face was a message saying that the inventory expansion task was completed. The description of the task was to get enough materials and take them to the tailor store owner Can. The reward for the task was inventory expansion plus 1 slot and 1350 experience points. He saw that he was now at level 8. Fong asked the shopkeeper where he could get good weapons. Kong turned his head to him and said he could give him one, but in return, Fang Tian must perform a somewhat difficult task for him. He embedded a dagger in the wooden counter he was standing behind. It was an item, a tailor's dagger. Fong took it in his hands. He said the dagger was good and he would take it. He asked what task he needed to do. Fan replied that he needed to deliver a letter for him. A message about a new task appeared in front of Fan. It was an additional task, namely to help Khan deliver the letter. It was to be delivered to the owner of a hut in the forest. The reward for completing the task was 2,000 experience points. Fan decided to clarify that for a simple delivery of the letter he can get as much as 2,000 experience points. Also, by completing this task the player could reach level 10. Fan accepted the task. He left the store telling Khan that he understood the assignment. Khan called Fan an adventurer and wished him a good journey. There are trees and mountains all around. Tang Chang was already there. Standing beside her was the guy who had urgently asked for her help. The roar of a huge monster that was bound in chains could be heard. While he was defending himself from the monster, he addressed Tang Chang, asking if Fang Tian was really a rookie and if she had told him about the legendary rookie quest. She asked which quest she was talking about. The guy with surprised eyes asked if she really didn't know about that legendary rookie zone task that no one can complete. There was a guy standing on a rock with a bow in his hands. Jane's mysterious hunter whose attacks are incredibly powerful. You can't even get close to him, and if you fail the quest, you'll be banned from the system for a full 3 days. And this task is only for beginners, and it disappears after a change of profession, so no one has ever finished it. Next to the guy were the dead players with archery arrows in their bodies. Tang Chang said that the forum said that the chance of getting this quest was 1 in 1,000. The monster they were fighting was all on fire. Just then, its head fell to the ground. He was dead. Tang Chang's friend put one foot on the monster's dead body, showing his victory. The girl kept thinking that Fang Tian couldn't be such a loser. At this time, Fong was already approaching the hut to complete his task. He stood at the entrance of the hut and asked if anyone was there. He warned that he was there to deliver a letter. No one answered him. He opened the door and looked inside. His eyes filled with fear. An arrow flew in his direction. There was definitely an archer in the hut. The boy stepped aside, but it hit him a little. He turned around, closed the door quickly behind him and started to run away. When he saw how much strength he had lost, he realized that this attack was very strong, since it had done so much damage to him just by hitting him a little. Standing outside, he asked who it was. A guy came out of the hut. In his hands was a bow and 3 arrows for him. He ordered Fan to open the letter and read the contents. Fang Tian looked at him questioningly, but still did as the guy said. He opened the letter. It said, "This is the person who needs to deliver the letter." The guy started aiming 3 arrows at Fan with his bow at once to check what kind of person Kong had sent. A message appeared in front of Fan that warned the system to complete a task that would reward 2,000 experience points. It said that once the character's level reached 10, he should return to the city as soon as possible to meet his mentor. The additional task was to try to defeat Jane. Reward unknown. Fan was not ready for the extra task. The guy was holding his bow in his hands. Fang Tian was opposite and had already prepared for battle. His feet lifted off the ground. With his entire body, he headed towards his opponent to fight. He did a somersault in the air. He prepared himself for the fact that his opponent's attacks were very dangerous. But since in this game, he couldn't lose anything if he died, then it was okay to try. Fang Tian was already running towards him. In his opponent's eyes, there was only interest in everything that was happening. He was not intimidated in any way. He shot a golden-colored arrow from his bow at Fan. Fang Tian received a message that he was in the damage zone. His activity was reduced by 35%. He didn't expect to be hit so quickly. His opponent launched an arrow while shouting that it was an explosion arrow. It flew straight at Fan. His feet stopped touching the ground. His body was thrown farther and farther away. Despite this, he managed to land on his feet without falling. There was a bright yellow light coming from the arrow. Fong realized if he used that attack again, it would be hard for him to avoid it in his condition. He He stood in front of the guy and told himself that he couldn't defeat him, so he needed to escape. The opponent smiled as he realized he was strong. He said that the old tailor had presented him with a good candidate. He offered to arrange a truce. He tossed Fan a small jar of green liquid. Fan caught it. It was a small elixir of life restoration. Description: it restores 500 health points immediately after use. Its flavor is very unpleasant, so the player can't drink it all the time. The recharge time was 120 minutes. The guy headed to enter the hut and called Fang Tian, whom he called an adventurer. With him, Fong walked in after him. Guy hung his bow on the wall and said that he could call him as Jane and he needed help. This fight was a test. Fang Tian asked how he could help him. Jane said he was a half-elf. Jane walked over to the table and started pouring himself a drink. He said that his grandfather's records mentioned a mysterious passageway in a mine in the forest near the city. He went on to say that according to his research, there were probably 7 necromancers there. Raphael's secret research lab. Fang Tian remembered that he had heard this name before in yodeling. It was a man and a girl. It was said that she was a great magician, but he had somehow become a necromancer. A necromancer who held the dead captive, becoming a sinister figure in the public eye. As Jane drank his drink, Fong said that with his powers he could go in there himself. As Jane set the cup on the table, Fong asked why he needed his help. Jane replied that the White Moon Wolf is a level 10 elite boss. He guards the entrance all the time and won't leave the place. Jane wants Fang Tian to get his attention and hold him off. Meanwhile, he will attack the White Wolf from the back and kill him. Fong asks him what he gets if he helps him do it. Jane moved closer to him and said, if it really is a secret lab, they will find a lot of things there. With luck, Fan might even find a magic book and learn special skills. He looked at Fan and asked if he was interested in this offer. Fang Tian thought for a moment. The chance to obtain what the legendary necromancer had left behind. This risk was worth it. He asked if there was nothing in this so-called necromancer's cave. Then what would he want? Jane said that even if there is nothing in this cave, then he can be his friend. He will be able to do one thing for Fan within his capabilities. However, this quest is only available to adventurers below level 10. Jane held out a vial of green liquid in his hand. It was the elixir of strength restoration again. He said that he wouldn't be able to level up until he finished this quest. Fang Tian took it. He said it was a good deal. He saw a clue from the system in front of him, which said that Kong had given him an assignment to investigate an abandoned mine. The essence of the task was to try to kill the White Wolf in the abandoned mine and enter the necromancer's cave. The difficulty of the task is S. The reward for the task is unknown. Fang Tian was very surprised that the difficulty of this quest was S rank. It's night. The White Wolf is sleeping outside the hut. The guys are already standing not far away from him. Fang Tian gazed into the distance to see more. He said that there was something strange with this White Moon Wolf's breath. It was an elite level boss after all. Jane started to pull out the arrows that were behind his back, while saying that he had waited here for 20 years, and the wolf was getting stronger every day. Perhaps it had mutated a bit over the years due to the influence of the necromancers in the mine. The wolf woke up to the voices of the guys. Fang Tian thought to himself, in general, the difficulty of the task is related to the reward. He thought back to his past battles where he had taken B difficulty missions, and a difficulty was generally rare. This mission was S-class, which meant that the reward should be very valuable. No wonder Kong had waited so long to take this mission. If there's something in the mines that can cause mutation into a white wolf, at least the guys won't go home empty-handed if they find it. Jane warned again that the White Moon Wolf can use lust to kill. Fang Tian should provoke him, and while he distracts him, Jane will attack him. Fong replied that he couldn't hold back the White Moon Wolf for long as he didn't have any special skills. Jane was very serious about killing the wolf. He made an oath with its blood flowing into him that he would kill the white wolf and go with Fan to the necromancer's cave. He took aim at the wolf and released the arrow. The arrow hit above the beast itself, into the rock on which it was sleeping. It woke up. His big, white paw stepped on the rock. He stood up full of rage. The wolf howled. Hearing his howl, other wolves started running out from behind the trees. The guys realized that he had called the forest wolves for help, so they should finish him off quickly. A level 5 timber wolf. They ran at the guys. Fang Tian started to run at them to attack. Jane said he would cover him and started aiming at them with his bow. One of the wolves jumped towards Fan. Fang Tian swung his dagger at the wolf and swiped it near its throat. The impact threw the beast backwards and it fell down. The second wolf started running at him. It bit Fan's shoulder. Just then a warning from the system came up that the timber wolf had dealt 54 units of damage to him and slowed his speed by 70%. Jane launched an arrow at that wolf. The white moon wolf was still standing on the rock. There was a wounded forest wolf lying below. The white moon wolf got ready to fight. He jumped off the rock towards the boys. When he landed, the ground beneath his feet failed from his weight. In terms of size, he was much bigger than the guys. Fang Tian looked at it and said that it was an incredible destructive power. A slight fear appeared in the guy's eyes. He realized that it was a lust for killing. The wolf was right in front of Fong. He received a warning from the system that he was in the kill zone and his agility was reduced by 35%. Fan realized that because this lust for killing had lowered his agility and was also taking off his XP, he wouldn't last that long. He started to run at the wolf. He had the urge to end things quickly. He got off the ground and pulled out his dagger to attack in the air. The guy's attack passed him by. Fong thought to himself that this was faster than just a timber wolf. He started dodging the wolf so that it wouldn't hurt him even more, but he couldn't run for long, so he started trying to run around the beast to attack from behind. Suddenly the wolf's huge paw was in front of him. Fong had his weapon ready to hit it. The ground under his feet was shattering into small pieces. Fong prevented him from pinning it down with his paw and held his claw with his knife. The wolf was very strong. The wolf screamed in anger because of Fan not letting him hit him with his paw. Fong bounced up sharply and almost lay on the ground while moving closer to the beast. He yelped as the blow was close to hitting him. Fan started to jump on top of him. He put his foot on his paw to help himself jump on him higher. He was already right in front of the wolf's eyes and already swinging his dagger at him. Fong thrust it into the wolf's left eye. The wolf began to growl louder and louder in pain. Blood spurted, and Fan almost jumped off him, but the wolf still bit Fan's stomach. His strength decreased even more. Now less than half. Fan was thrown back to the ground. Blood spattered out of him, and his stomach was left with 2 large wounds on the sides. He hit his head on a rock. He received a message from the system that he was under a crushing attack from the lunar white wolf. He would continue to take damage, and his movement speed was slowed by 70%. Fang Tian sat almost powerless beside the stone. He wondered if Jane had found a way to kill the white wolf yet. Fong was back on his feet even though he was injured. He could tell he was having a hard time continuing the fight. Once again he found himself facing the wolf. Fong had anger in his eyes and at the same time the strength to kill it. He was ready for whatever was about to happen to him. He jumped off the ground into the air. The wolf only began to growl more. Fong jumped up into the air closer to it. Just then, a bright yellow light appeared and was directed at the moon wolf. Fan was also hit by this light. His dagger flew out of his hand. The white wolf received a killing blow from Jane. The moon wolf was successfully killed. Fang Tian received a message from the system that he was attacked by Jane. He received 6,103 damage and he is dying. Fan, with no hope of recovery, only said that the plan had worked. In front of him stood Jane. The message from the system said that his character died in the game, so he has to wait 72 hours. He would not be able to re-enter the game until the time expired and he would lose 10% of all his experience. The bodies started to leave the game. Fang Tian didn't think that there would be a 3-day ban on entering the game after death, but the difficulty of S rank really wasn't that easy. Perhaps defeating the white wolf was only the first step to entering the mine. He hoped Jane would be waiting for him at the cabin in the woods as promised. The message to quit the game appeared in front of him. The duration of the game was 4 hours and 23 minutes. Fang Tian found himself in his room. He took off his helmet. The house was quiet, and he himself was sitting on the bed. He went out into the corridor. He saw Tian Xian walking someone out of the house and waving at him. Fong asked her if Uncle Tong had left. She said that her father had some business to attend to at work, so he would probably be gone for a while. At that, closing the front door, Fang Tian wondered if the business at work was because of Uncle Hubbard's plan. Tiang Qin started to hug Fan's neck and said that her dad had done everything and he would go to school with her tomorrow. Fang Tian asked her back in surprise. It's a warm, sunny, slightly windy day. All the students are getting ready for classes. Some are already sitting in the classroom. Fang Tian stood in the middle of the classroom next to the teacher who was introducing a new student to the class. He introduced himself in front of everyone. Some guy from the back desk stood up and shrieked in surprise that it was the same guy who had fought in the game back then. The teacher ordered him to sit down and not to stand up without permission. She pointed Fang Tian to an empty seat that was behind Luo Jianbing and said that he could sit there. As Fang Tian walked to his seat, all the students in the class looked at him, and the girls in the class began to whisper about the new student. Some said that he was handsome, while others said that he looked indifferent. The teacher reminded everyone that they were having a self-study lesson. She walked out of the classroom. Luo Jianbing turned to Fang Tian, calling him a great master, and said that Boss Tian had talked about him playing this game recently. He asked how yesterday's training went and offered his help. Fong thanked him for the offer, but said that he liked to level up on his own and he was not an expert since he had died on a mission yesterday, so he wouldn't be able to enter the game for 3 days. Fong reminded him that he was in the beginner zone, so why would he need help? He pulled out a textbook from his backpack and asked if it was alchemy. Lo asked if Fong was on a mission where he needed to find a cabin in the forest. Fong asked how he knew and if he was on that mission. Lo replied that he had just heard about it. He asked if Fong had beaten him. Fong started to bring up Jane. He replied that he didn't beat him since he is very strong. Lo was surprised that Fan wasn't killed by that archer. Fang Tian told him the whole story that happened to him there. Luo cried out, not believing his ears. He started to tell him that it meant Fan had completed the legendary quest in the rookie zone. It is said that in the last 20 years, only a few people have gotten this quest, and they were all killed by an archer. Luo was surprised that Fang Tian had helped him kill the Wolf King. Fang put his head on his hand and said that killing the white wolf was only the first step and there was more to do. Luo started to prove to him otherwise, that it was a very difficult task. If the first step of this task is so difficult, won't the next one be worse? He asked how valuable the reward for this assignment was. Fang started to push Luo away from him so he wouldn't be so close. He replied that he would have to wait 3 days and then log in and see what happens next. Lo went down on his knees hugging Fan's legs and started begging to take him on as an apprentice. Fang Tian refused him. There was no way the guy wanted to put up with it. Fong said he had 2 strict rules. So no. The bell rang. Tian Qian walked into the classroom. In front of her was a picture of Luo hugging Fan's legs while begging him for something. She put her hands on her waist and told Luo that his screams could be heard in the hallway. Luo addressed her as Boss Tang and asked her to be gentle. The girl turned to Fang Tian and told him that the next class was a social activity. He hadn't signed up for the club yet and offered to guide him and show him what was around. Luo started talking to Fan again like he was a great master and that he should only go to one club, the video game club. Fang Tian thought about his suggestion and asked which club he was talking about. Tian Xian explained to him that a club is a society organized by their school to enrich the interests of the students. There are many clubs: art, singing, literature, reasoning and so on. Now, fantasy is the most popular video game of all time. Even the government holds national school tournaments to train potential players. Luo clenched his hand into a fist, proudly said that their school's video game club has become the most popular club. It is the #1 in the school. Fang Tian remembered that Uncle Hubbard had told him the same thing in his report. He suggested looking at the video game club, the signboard of the building where the club was located. There were 3 guys standing near the entrance. The club was closed. The video game club had thousands of students registering every year, so sometimes it might be closed. They decided to go somewhere else. Walking down the street, Fang Tian walked quietly while Luo kept catching up with them and talking about something. Some guy pointed his finger in their direction and started saying that this is the vice president walking. In the middle is Fang Tian and next to him is Tian Xian. They are both in physics class. The girl who was standing next to him by the tree didn't really pay attention to his talk. She calmly asked if he was sure that guy was using free mode. He told her that it was accurate, because the move he made when he was in the game could only be done in free mode. She stepped away from the tree. There were green leaves lying around. The girl started taking pictures on her phone of the guys as they walked down the street. She started to say that it was all strange, because this man is not known to many people and he came out of nowhere. She asked a guy standing next to her what he thought of Tian Xian. He said that compared to the average person, she is really a master, but she lacks training, so she needs to practice. The girl started to leave, telling him that he was in charge of the recruitment test for the video game club. As for this Fang Tian that the guy told her about, she replied that she would observe him. Fang Tian and Tian Xin were at the entrance of the house. They were taking off their shoes in the hallway. The girl asked if he had been to the newcomer village yesterday. He replied no, as he had played for a while yesterday and died. She asked in surprise how he could have died. Fan laughed awkwardly and said he was doing a mission and died. The girl had just gotten a new assignment yesterday, so she wouldn't be able to help for 2 days. Fang Tian replied no big deal. She had already gone about her business, but then came back to remind him that she would advise him to the forums of the game. There is a lot of useful information for a newcomer like Fang Tian. He smiled and said okay. Fang Tian started to put on his helmet. After loading in the game, he saw a timer that showed the time, how much time he had left to wait. He wondered, as long as he can't enter the game, then why don't he go to the forum that Tian Chen was talking about? He told the system to go to the forum. He received a message from the system that had instructions for Fan. The forum login was loading. The instructions of the game appeared in front of him. He looked at it and couldn't contain his surprise. A sound came out from Fan Tian's helmet. It was a message sent to him. In front of him on the screen was the information that at the end of the first year of the game suddenly appeared a huge bug. The player entered the fantasy and somehow takes all the items from the game world. Originally present in the game, 30-level boss Scorpion broke through into the real world. The evil Scorpion appeared and began to wreck the city. The incident quickly caused panic and anxiety around the world. After the Scorpion was destroyed, the federal government decreed that access to the game by special means would be illegal, and it would be punishable by death. At the same time, the federal government launched the Butterfly Project to select talented players to join the game. This project was needed to take direct action against possible in-game threats in extreme cases. After that, there was no news. Fang Tian continued to read that since the Butterfly Project had started, it was likely that the target of the Butterfly Project would be in-game NPCs. Fong thought for a moment. T-27 Zone 3 Commander. Could Uncle Tong be part of the Butterfly Project? The blue bar that signified the player's exit showed up. Fang Tian took off his helmet. He sits at a desk in the school by the window and writes down the lesson. The students are sitting on a bench taking a break from PE. Above the city, the sky is orange from the sunset. 3 days have passed. Fong is about to put on his helmet to re-enter the game. Last time Jane promised him to wait until he entered the mine, but he doesn't know if Jane kept his promise. He puts the helmet on himself. Entering the game. Light blue light formed around Fan as he found himself in the game near the mine where he finished his last fight with the wolf. Jane sat there, waiting. Leaning his head on his palm, he told Fan that it seemed his resurrection was taking a long time. Fang Tian started to get angry and told him that Jane didn't just plan for Fong to provoke the white wolf. He deliberately targeted and attacked him. Jane jumped off the rock and said he was right. It takes no little time to use Jane's attack, so only when he is provoked at Fan will the white wolf not feel threatened and run away. Jane admitted that he caught the moment when he was open and hit Fan and the wolf. Fang Tian answered him that killing 2 birds with 1 stone was a great plan. Jane held out his hand to Fan, which had the wolf's Fong in it. He decided to give it away since he didn't need it. Fang Tian took the Fong. Its rarity was C+. The white moon wolf Fong retained its power and strength before its death. It could be used for forging, alchemy, etc. Jane headed inside the cave and said it was all thanks to Fan and called out to him to follow. Fang Tian said that since he's a murderer and the fine is small, he'll go first just in case. A message came from the system. The mission has been changed. Description: explore an abandoned mine. The reward for the quest is unknown. A letter appeared in front of them. They opened the door and stepped inside. The letter flew further away from them in the air. Fong's foot hit something iron. It was the helmets lying near the door for protection. He said that it seemed there were already people here, and there had been a battle. Fong noticed something off to the side, crouched down and looked closer. It was a flower that was purple in color. The message from the system said that the player's evaluation was level 0, so it was impossible to evaluate this species. Jane said that it could be the flower of dead souls, which was an important ingredient for pharmacists. They were walking across a bridge, which was in a mine shaft. They entered a room that had the door they were looking for. It had a green star painted on it. A message from the system came in, stating that the player was subject to strong undead breath. A random base characteristic was reduced by 3 points every 10 minutes, and the damage the player received was increased by 30%. Jane wondered about the undead breath account. Fang Tian said that it seemed like this stone door was built mainly to block the undead breath coming from the other side of the door. What was left of the great undead mage Raphael was most likely behind the stone wall that the guys were standing in front of. The necromancer Raphael, like Jane, is a half-elf. The gods have decreed that those of them who seek power will find themselves in the arms of the dead. Jane touched the green-colored signs with his hand and said can decipher the spells that were on the door as well as understand what was written there. He looked carefully at the star. A green vapor began to emanate from it. A stream of air began to push against them. Fang Tian didn't understand what was happening. There was a message from the system. There was a change of mission. It said that upon entering the cave, he would find a seal on the stone door that needed to be opened to enter. The job description said to open the seal. A hand came out of the ground. It was the monsters that were heading towards the boys. They didn't expect that they would have to fight again. They stood with their backs to each other and began to defend from different sides. Fang Tian started running towards the monsters. Blue streaks were left from his dagger. He slashed their heads as he ran. They were undead skeletons, but it was strange that this happened. It turns out they were all waiting for them here. While Fang Tian was fighting the undead skeletons, Jane put his hand on the center of the green star that was not the door and began to recite an incantation. Something began to happen. Jane was flung away from the door. He landed on his feet and immediately picked up his bow. They both didn't realize what was happening. This seal was more powerful than Jane had expected. Based on the situation around him, he assumed that there were third-level dead beings, evil spirits behind the seal. Fong said that he had heard that ordinary physical attacks were useless against evil spirits. At this time, he was trying to defeat one of the monsters. They were wondering what to do now since they were losing characterization points. And these undead skeletons were not affected by physical attacks. A yellow beam appeared in front of Fano. It was Jane who had launched the arrow. He said that it's not going to work like that. First we need to get out of there and think about how to open the seal. The yellow light spread all around. Dead bodies of skeletons were scattered all over the place. The guys took advantage of the moment and started to run away. Fang Tian turned back to see if there were any skeletons. No one was running after them and he assumed that they were only near the seal. After they stopped running, they decided to catch their breath and wondered what they should do now. Since no one in the village would be able to open such a seal, Fong pondered the question. He answered that he could ask someone. He opened his friends list and clicked on the player Tang Chang. They were chatting. Fang Tian said that he was going through a mission and there was something strange. It must be a seal. He sent her a picture of the seal and asked if she could open it. She started asking what assignment he was even on since it's a level 6 seal. Even a school instructor wouldn't be able to open it. Fong still questioned if there was no way to open it. Tang Chang replied that one could ask around on the forums. There are special quest hunters who might be interested, but they would have to pay a lot of money, so they should be willing to splurge. Jane asked hopefully how Fan was doing. Fan replied that it's problematic. His friend won't be able to open that seal either, but she suggested one way that would require a lot of money. Jane started to go somewhere. He walked over to the dead soul flowers that Fang Tian had found. Fong wondered what they were for. With the flowers of dead souls you can create potions that have an effect on evil spirits. These flowers are very valuable. They can be used in exchange for some money. Although Jane has tools, but he has no skills, and if he tries to rip them off, it will affect the integrity and quality of the dead soul flowers. He held out his hand with the flower to Fang Tian. Fang Tian has been living in fantasy for over 10 years and knows how to collect this, but he doesn't know if he can use it here. After gathering his courage, Fan decided that he could do it. Jane held out the tool to him. Fang Tian took it in his hands. It was an old collector's instrument. Its rarity was 0. With it, the player could use the collection skills. Since the tool was already somewhat rusty, the collection success rate was 2%. He received a message from the system. It was the activation of the player's hidden skills. Successful understanding of collecting, LVL of 5. Fang Tian crouched down near the flowers and started cutting them with the tool Jane had given him. The picking was almost finished. His hands were wearing black gloves that had the cut flower on them. A message came from the system that the player had received a flower of dead souls. Quality 3. Integrity 90%. Increases the gathering experience by 8 times. The gathering was almost finished. Fang Tian rubbed his forehead with his hand from fatigue. Jane started to leave and said that he would refine a potion that could deal with evil spirits, and relied on Fan for the seal. They would meet at the hut in 2 days to discuss the matter. Fang Tian looked at his inventory. He wondered if anyone would really buy these flowers. At this time, some girl was sitting on the couch broadcasting Lalu, which she was already finishing, and wished the viewers good night. She turned off the tablet. She turned to the chairman and asked what was wrong. Across from her were 2 guys and 1 girl. One of them answered her that someone on the forum had posted a post about a sale that attracted more attention and he would like the girl to make a deal with that player and his main target 30 million gold coins. The girl was surprised at the amount and asked what could be there that was worth 30 million. The guy looked straight ahead and calmly replied that they were flowers of dead souls. The girl asked again if flowers of dead souls really existed. The students were in the classroom waiting for class to start. Luo turned to Fan asking what happened to his assignment. Fang Tian in his chair and said that he ran into some problems. There is a seal that is hard to open, but Tang Chang told him to seek help on the forum, so now he is waiting for an answer. Luo offered to take his tablet to look at the fantasy forum right now. Fang Tian took it and was surprised that there was such a handy device. He uploaded a picture of the seal to the chat room, but everyone started talking about how there was no way to do it. Even experienced masters probably couldn't do it. The guys decided that no one had replied. Fang Tian scrolled down the feed in the tablet. He saw that there were a huge number of replies to the question about selling dead flowers. Luo said that this post had become very popular, and it looked like the owner would be rich since so many people had responded. This is where he was surprised. On the screen, they saw a post that looked like it was Fang Tian's. Luo put his hand on Fan's neck while Fan tried to pull him away. Luo wasn't paying attention and only talked about the post that had become incredibly popular. He again talked about how Fan was worthy of becoming a Grand Master. People started writing about the post about dead souls and offering millions for it. There was a post from a girl who was offered a deal to buy those flowers. She introduced herself as Shin Lalu from the Star Guild. She wrote that their guild was very interested in the dead soul flowers. She hoped that she would be contacted about the sale. She provided her contacts and information. Luo happily picked up the tablet and started to get excited about the #1 beauty Shin Luo in Fan's post. Fang Tian asked how he knew it was her. He pointed his finger at the girl's avatar and said to look at that beautiful head, long eyelashes and pretty eyes. He saw the information that it was a certified forum user, so it was definitely her. While Luo Jinbing was hugging the tablet in joy, Fong asked him to help him get her contacts. He happily agreed and said that this girl was his goddess. How could he refuse it? Fang Tian walked out of school and Tian Xian was already waiting for him outside. They walked home together. The girl threw her backpack on the bed and immediately went to play since her friends were already waiting for her there. She asked them to bring her some juice. Fang Tian took off his backpack. Before he could leave the room, Tang Chang had already put on her helmet to start the game. Fong brought her apple juice and placed it next to her on the nightstand, while Tang Chang sat next to her in the chair and was immersed in the game. Since she had an assignment today, he decided to load up too and go to the forum. A huge dark building. There was a girl sleeping on the couch, and another girl was sitting next to her. Looking at the screen of a tablet, she addressed the girl as her sister who was sleeping. She asked why she thought those flowers of dead souls were really worth 30 million. The text said that this person had only recently played and could it be a scam. Lol pulled the sleep mask off her eyes and stretched. Replied that so far no guild has taken level 60. Flowers of dead souls is the key to pass. Does she really think it's not worth it? The tech department also said that the flowers of dead souls in the screenshot are of very high quality, and the integrity of none of them is below 70%, indicating that the person who collected them had quite high collection skills, so it's definitely not a hoax. Lalu went further to sleep. Suddenly, her sister started calling out to her, showing the tablet screen that showed that this guy had sent a friend request. Lalu immediately jumped up and snatched the tablet. She had been waiting for this all night and now this guy had sent a friend request. He sent her a message saying he read her post on the forum and heard that her guild was interested in dead soul flowers, asking how much she was willing to pay for it. Lalu's sister thought to herself about this guy having the opportunity to write to her, and he immediately started talking about payment, calling him a shambolic person. Lalu didn't pay attention to that. The president watched this guy's ability to collect. He's incredible. In the chat, Lalu wrote that he cannot worry about the prices their guild will pay not little. Her sister replied that they could also help open the seal he talked about in the forum. Fang Tian pointed out that it was not an easy seal and the price for it would be high. The girl replied that talking about money hurt their feelings. They were talking about cooperation. Fang Tian was in the game. Tian Xian said that it would take a lot of money to open the seal. It was strange to talk about cooperation instead of money, but he couldn't give up the S-class quest. In the chat, Fong asked how he could cooperate with them. The girl replied that there was nothing complicated. If he had something good, then he should contact their Star Guild first. Also, if there were any questions, they could be approached for help. Fang Tian agreed. As a sign of their peacefulness, Lalu offered to open the seal Fong was talking about for free. As for the colors of dead souls, she offered 15 million. The other girl who was in the Star Guild wrote in the chat that it was possible to meet in person. There was a bag of change on the table and a small chest where the bills were found. The monsters in the game are very strong, and the ratio of real and virtual currency is so high that a gold coin is worth $10,000. Fang Tian didn't expect that he could make so much money just by collecting some dead soul flowers. No wonder Luo Jianbing always said that professional players make a lot of money. Luolu's sister looked into her phone and was angry why Fan didn't answer anything. She lowered the price of 30 million, the chairman said. Is it not too little for him? Lalu was calm. She said that it wasn't so little. Besides, not everyone could work with a Star Guild. She gave him time to think about it. Fang Tian stood against the wall in the game and thought about the girl's suggestion. He remembered the picture of how Luo was happy that this girl turned out to be exactly Luolu. Right after that, he wrote that he was happy with the price and would let her know where the deal would take place. In addition, he had one more request for them. Fang Tian stood outside in the village, leaning his back against the stone wall. A blue ray appeared in front of him. Someone had come to his game. He saw a beautiful girl. She stepped onto the ground. She asked if his name was Fang Tian to make sure he was the one they had a deal with. Fang Tian crossed his arms over his chest with no emotion on his face and said yes. She asked again that he was the mysterious player with advanced gathering skills and a level 10 rookie. Pointed her finger up, with a green light appearing on the end of it to verify that this ID was the same as the one she had been texted from before. Wondering if the rookie's ID might have been used to hide it, Lalu headed towards Fan, extending her hand for introductions. She introduced herself and said she brought the money as they had agreed in the transaction. Fan looked at her hand without a mutual shake as she reminded him that they had corresponded yesterday and suggested that the deal had already begun. She immediately removed her hand and asked what kind of Fan would be so cold. That night, as they negotiated for a meeting, Fan said he had one more request. He asked for an autographed picture of her. Lalu's sister told her that he seems to be a big fan of hers. Chingsong City is sparsely populated. Lalu is on business and has no time to think about love. The girl began to suspect that he was using the newcomer as a cover. When Fong didn't shake her hand in return, she proudly put it away and said it was okay to start the deal. A message came through about receiving an exchange request with a choice to accept or decline. The girl looked at the message and pointed her finger at the choice to accept the trade. Fong saw a message in front of him saying that he had received a lot of gold coins, which would cause him to start attracting other people's attention. With a warning to be careful, a magic scroll appeared in his hand. He asked how the scroll worked. The girl told him to just use the scroll near the seal. She warily looked at the guy with thoughts of gathering a herb of dead souls. This man must not be so simple. They were going to force him to join their guild. Lalu sweetly asked him, since they were happy to cooperate, then why didn't she show him their guild? Something happened to Fan. He saw a golden light in front of his eyes. He was surprised. The image of Uncle Hubbard appeared in his mind, reminding him that he warned for women. They are dangerous creatures and should be careful with them. After these words, Fong started to run away from the girl and said that he was on a mission now, so it would be better some other time. Lulu asked him if he wanted to take the autographed photo he was talking about. He shouted that his classmate liked her, so he would send his address later so she could send him the autograph herself. The girl was angry that he asked for the autograph for his classmate and not for himself. She started shouting that she was a famous person and he just said a few words and left. She seriously said that she had to see what he was capable of since he could behave like that. Fang Tian came to the entrance of the mine, near which Jane was waiting for him. He handed him 2 sealed flasks with a pink-colored liquid. It was the potion Jane had been working on for the past few days. Fang should use it on his weapon, and then he would be able to kill the undead. Fan took them in his hand and received a message from the system. It said that he had obtained an executioner's potion, the effect of which was to get an additional 0.5 damage increase. The potion was mixed with some materials that have a good effect against undead. Jane offered to get rid of Lulu to Fan, who was behind the trees at the time and watching the guys. Fan refused his help as she helped with opening the seal and follows from the beginning, so he doesn't know what she is up to. Jane said that if she interfered with the mission, he would deal with her first. Lalu watched them and realized that the NPC Jane from the legendary rookie assignment was next to Fan. According to the intelligence analysis, a highly intelligent elite with strength comparable to an elite boss, Fang Tian had actually gained his trust. She was astonished by this as she didn't think it was accurate information. The dead soul flowers and seal should be the key to Jane's mission. She wanted to go there and check it out. In her hand, she already had a weapon prepared that emitted a blue light. Fang Tian began to use it to kill the undead skeletons they couldn't handle last time. After destroying them, they looked at what was left of the skeletons. Jane noted that the potion was really working on the undead since these skeletons were no longer revived. They were ready to open the seal now. Fong tossed the scroll that Lalu had given him to open the seal. A message from the system appeared saying that to use an unknown magic scroll, 2,000 mana points were needed and Fang Tian's mana points were not enough. Jane was standing behind him. He asked what was wrong with this scroll. Fong told him that he didn't have enough mana to use the scroll. Jane asked why he shouldn't ask Lula to do it. Fong hesitated. They stood on the bridge that was the way to the door they need to enter. Fong shouted to the whole room that he knew Shin Lala was there and ordered her to come out. No hiding. The girl at this time stood behind the wall and watched the guys. She didn't understand how Fong could notice her if he's only level 10, and he must be lying. Jane's arrows flew towards her. She immediately put her back against the wall so she wouldn't get hit. Jane said in her direction, if she didn't get out, then the next arrow would kill her. At the end of the bridge was a room with Lulu hiding behind the walls. In the middle of the room, Jane's arrow was sticking out. Fang Tian said for her to finally come out. They need her help. From behind the wall, her hand appeared. She awkwardly smiled and asked when he had time to notice her. Jane with his bow pointed at the girl replied that they knew from the beginning that she was following them. Lalu started to get angry. If they knew from the beginning, why didn't they reveal it right away, or was it because they wanted to see what she was up to? Fong with a calm voice said no, she's kind of nice. Lulu didn't seem happy that he didn't think she was bad. He didn't seem to be so cold to her either. The guys hoped that the bad guys wouldn't track them down. Fang Tian asked why she didn't tell him right away that it took so much mana to activate the scroll. Lalu replied that all magic scrolls require the appropriate amount of mana. It's common sense after all. She took the scroll in her hands and presented it to the signs on the door and added that since he didn't think she was bad, then she would try to do it. The scroll began to glow with a magical light in the air. It was right in front of the door and began to come free from the tape it was wrapped with. A green light appeared in the room. A door opened in front of them. Lalu said that the seal was now broken and let them be careful. Everything was in green streaks of light. Fan walked forward and told them to follow him. A message came to him that he was under the influence of the power, holy light. Blessing. Physical strength has increased. The player is suffering from the effects of holy light art courage. Blessing effects. Attack increase additional damage reduction. Fong asked Lulu if she was a priest. She replied that she is the strongest priest of light and darkness and she can do many things. Jane prepared his weapons just in case and they decided to begin. They started walking down the dark hallway. Suddenly creatures started flying at them from the darkness. They looked like skeletons wearing a hooded cloak. Lulu said that they were spirits and that physical attacks would not work on them. Jane started shooting at them with her arrows. The spirits hovered above the guys in the air. Fang Tian tried to fight them and he managed to destroy some. Lalu was surprised that he was able to kill 4 spirits in one move. She wondered if he was playing in free mode. Fong smelled a strange odor and asked if the guys could smell it too. Lalu said she didn't smell anything. Jane said it was the smell of decomposition, probably some high-level monster, and warned caution. A monster of enormous size appeared in front of them and was closing in on them. They were ready to fight it even though they didn't expect to see it. It was an experimental monster, namely a mutated pig. Level 30, Elite Boss. Description: the product of a failed necromancy experiment, able to accept simple commands from its creator. The girl directed her vision to see more accurate information about him. He was screaming with anger at this time. Fan suggested using the old tactic. He distracts and Jane looks for a way to kill him. They started attacking him. Jane was shooting arrows at him. Fan was preparing to attack him in his own way. He jumped away from the ground, found himself in front of the monster's face, then landed on an arrow sticking out of the monster's belly. He stuck his dagger into it. When he jumped back, the monster screamed in pain. His blood splattered from where Fan had hit it. The monster swung his knife that was in his hand. Fong was also ready to strike at this time. He jumped up and got in front of his face again. He kicked him in the neck. He turned his head back from the hard blow. They found themselves facing each other. At this time Lalu and Jane were standing not far away. Jane was dripping a potion he made himself on his arrows. He kept saying that Fang Tian was only level 10 and wouldn't be able to resist this boss for long. Lulu decided that she had to trap him. She cast a secret spell, Capture, on him. The purple beam from the spell hit the monster's head. It didn't work. Lulu started to get worried about this. She started shouting to Fan that it was a spirit monster. He turned from the monster to face Lalu to hear her words. At this time the monster swung its knife at him. Fang Tian managed to spot it and quickly jumped up. The monster's knife hit him past hitting the ground. Fong jumped onto his back. He sat on him and wrapped his legs around his neck, pointing the dagger at him from above. He hit him in the side of his neck with it. The monster felt pain. Fan uttered his last words to the monster that it was too late. Jane had already prepared to shoot an arrow at him when he fired. At this time Fan jumped up. The arrow hit right into the monster's head. Its face and arms were missing from the impact. Jane easily sighed at the fact that they were able to destroy it. Fong asked if he was okay. Jane said he was just a little overworked and needed a break. Lalu started asking what the mission was. Not to mention the monsters. Is it definitely a rookie village mission? The first time she saw it, she thought it was an easy boss. Fang Tian crouched down next to the body of the destroyed monster. A rotten patchwork cloak appeared in the air in front of him. Rating, C. Its additional defense, 70 points. Additional health, 1200 points. Equipment description adds 10 points. Durability, fireproof. Power, 20% extra strength on impact. He received an item, rotten keys. Lalu said that she heard that there was a chance of finding the boss's soul. Fan picked up the cloak he received. The girl started asking if it was really a soul gear. She said it was a pity since the attributes were so bad that it wasn't worth it. Fan replied that it suits him, at least it adds strength and health. But as for the extra damage, it's useless unless Fan is in combat. He decided to ask Lulu again what she meant by boss soul and soul gear. She was surprised that he didn't know that either. Fan replied that he didn't know that. Lawala thought he was an expert going through the game over again. But how could an expert not know about soul gear? She started to think that maybe this kid really is gifted. She needed to take him into the guild. With training he could definitely become a strong player. The soul boss is a council kind of monster in the game. This monster is completely immune to skills. Magic skills, for example, cannot harm spirit monsters at all. All spells consume spirits, and also skill augmentations have no effect. Only normal attacks work, so it is extremely difficult for mages to deal with this monster. But there may be additional penalties if it is killed. Lalu quietly told Fan about Jane, that there might be a spirit boss as well. As for the soul equipment, just by having the word soul in the name in front of it, there are no staggered restrictions on wearing it, and its attributes are much lower than normal equipment. So it's useless. However, it seems that there are people who specialize in secretly acquiring such equipment. Fong wondered aloud then about soul skills. Lalu asked what it was. He was surprised that Lawolo didn't know about them, which meant there were no such things. He asked if she thought it was weird. Fan explained that the game is intentionally divided into two types, soul and non-spirit. He believes that soul equipment can have an effect on spirit monsters, and so there should also be spirit skills against them. The girl thought about what he said and agreed. But at the very least, he is right about one thing: some equipment effects have an effect on monsters. Fong began to speak his thoughts out loud that the soul system is a complicated system, and he seemed to realize what was going on. They were standing in front of a new door. Jane said that it looked like this boss was the last obstacle. There was a skull-shaped lock on the door. Fong inserted the key he got for passing the previous boss into it. The key fit perfectly and the doors opened in front of them. Jane went in first. Lulu was about to enter after him, but something prevented her from doing so when she hit her forehead on something hard. They didn't realize what had happened. Couldn't one of them get in? Fong touched the solid entrance with his hand and was told that he was under the influence of certain seals and could not enter in that state. Fan was on the outside with Lalu, while Jane was on the opposite side. Jane said it was a soul lock seal, a high-level seal that the caster added to the soul mark seal. Usually only the caster could remove it. Lalu said that illusion had such seals, specifically banning players from entering, but she doesn't know how to break them. Fong wondered how it could be done. Soul seal and a special ban on players from entering. I guess he figured out what this thing was. Fong said something quietly in Jane's ear while Lawala was standing next to him. Jane questioned if he was serious about doing such a thing. He did say let Fong do what he said and he would go inside next. Jane left and the doors closed. A system alert came up congratulating the player on completing the Explore the Cave quest. The player had gained Jane's favor. Hint: if the player can get inside the wooden door, he can start the next quest. Fan sadly told Lawala that he had just been told by the system that the quest was complete and they could leave. Lulu started screaming. Did Jane escape? She was angry because she could sense that there was something else behind the door. It's a shame it ended like this. Fang Tian said he couldn't get in anyway, so it's fine. The girl lightly sighed and took the scroll in her hands with the words that Fong is very kind. She conjured something in her hands. It was a teleportation scroll that only spends 10 points, but one can quickly return to the city. Fong took it and thanked her. He received a message that the player Shin Lalu had thrown a request to be added as friends. She offered to be friends as there was something else she wanted to talk to him about. Lalu started to leave the place with a teleportation scroll and said that this was no place to talk and it was time to go home. A blue light was left from her footprints. Fang Tian looked at the scroll he held in his hand. Once again, the village where everyone was minding their own business. Lalu was already waiting for Fan there. But he still wasn't there. She thought that he couldn't even use the return scroll. She decided to message him and ask him where he was, but she got a message saying that the player was offline. She wondered why he was offline. Everyone says there's more to talk about. This guy is really weird to her. Fan was in his room. He took off his helmet. It was already late outside. He kept thinking about the soul boss, the soul gear. He thought that this illusion was the same as the illusion he had lived in for over 10 years, but separated into two different worlds by the soul blocking method. At the time when he had lived in the city for over 10 years, he hadn't met any unusual players like Tang Chang and Shin Lalu. He stood by the door to the room and thought, if that was the case, then as long as he used this method to enter the game, he should be able to return to the hut. He looked at his hand and thought, Uncle Hubard had explained to him that it couldn't be used, that if Tang Chang found out he wasn't in the room, then what to do? He clenched his hand into a fist. It looked like Tang Chang was still in the game, but he couldn't give up on the S-class mission. He must try to do it. He stood in the middle of his room and pointed his hand into space. Streaks of blue color appeared all around, then a huge round ball that was also glowing with blue light. Fang Tian player enters the game. Game data integration. Integration is complete. Player Fang Tian was already in the game. He stood in front of the hut, pointing his palm upwards. A small light appeared in it. His assumptions were correct. These two worlds were indeed interacting. He opened his inventory, which contained shoes, shirt, pants, dagger and cloak. It seems that soul gear can only be used in the game world when wearing a helmet. On the other hand, entering the game in a special way, ordinary equipment loses its effect. Fan opened the door and stepped inside. A star and symbols were drawn in front of him. Books, flasks, sheets were scattered. Fong asked someone if he found what he was looking for. In the middle of this star stood Jane. His arms were spread apart, and from his palms two small lights of blue color. Jane replied that the necromancer Raphaela was a true genius. When she modified the formula and used the soul fire of the undead to turn herself into the first shadow elf. He kept doing his thing and said that she left behind these fires that contain the power of the mighty undead, and this formula that could be discovered by having both human and elf blood. He made a circle out of his palms in which the color blue blazed and continued that this opportunity that the archmage had left him. He said to follow in his footsteps and become the next shadow elf. He stood with his back to Fan. The wind from working magic was blowing around him. Jane stopped. He fell to his knees without strength. Fan asked if he had done it. The man replied that he had only temporarily absorbed the spiritual fire. Fong asked if there was nothing but undead fire. Jane pointed a finger and said that the magic books here were all bound and they wouldn't be able to take them with them. But there were a few little things that might be of interest. A bright yellowish beam appeared along the room. Fong wondered what it was. It was the key to the lost city. A girl was sitting at a table reading a book. It was recorded in the data that necromancer Raphaela had been studying the lost sanctuary for a long time. She had originally wanted to use the power of the holy shrine to accomplish her goal, but unfortunately, for some reason, she found herself in a predicament. She had no choice but to take the risk and use the power of the undead to become the first shadow elf. It was because of her that trust between humans and elves was lost and all the wars started. Fong held a key in his hand. It was the key to the bank safe in Ruined City. It was engraved with the number 78, with which the player could open the safe and access its contents. Fan received a message saying that the main task of exploring the mine was completed. Mission score 8. Reward basic difficulty +1. Dexterity +1. Strength +1. Intelligence +1. Nan +1. Next part of the S mission. The key left by Raphaeli. Mission description: a key left by the necromancer Raphaeli was obtained. An invisible force pushes Fan to explore it all. Fang Tian did not expect that the reward for the S-rank cross would be an increase in basic skills. The difference between the two worlds didn't seem to affect his basic skills. No wonder his basic skills were different from what Tang Chang said the other day. After all, he had slightly under them through quests and training. The room began to shake and collapse. Jane said hurriedly, Since this place had been corrupted by the breath of the undead for years, everyone had relied on the outer seal as a source of power to control it. But now that the seal had been destroyed, this place would soon collapse. They managed to run outside just in time. At that time, the entire cave collapsed behind them. The Empire couldn't extinguish the soul flame, so they put a seal outside to block the undead from breathing. Now that the soul flame is extinguished, they will send someone to check it out. Jane needs to find a safe place to complete the shadow transformation. Fong told him to be careful. Jane told him that Fang Tian is very different from the others and Jane will owe him for everything. He jumped from his seat and said that the Empire would want to trace the undead scent on them, so he had to be careful. He ended up in a tree and went on to say that he would look forward to seeing him again, and with the hope that Fong would be stronger by then. Fang Tian thought about the fact that besides getting the rewards in this quest, that golden key seemed to be an important element to unlock the next part of the quest. A smirk appeared on his face. Fang Tian was already approaching his house. He went inside. Tang Chang asked why he was up so early. Fong was going to practice. He took a glass from the table and drank. He said just a couple laps. The girl asked if Fong was free today. He didn't answer as he was all in his thoughts that the new skill points added yesterday gave him a slight increase in strength and speed. He had to train to control his body more accurately. The girl placed her hand on the table with her palm down. She took hold of the edges of the towel that hung around Fan's neck and asked if he could hear her at all. He said he was just distracted. She let go of him and exhaled. Calmly said she meant they had a game with their chemistry class today, and asked if he would go with her. Fan sat down at the table. He apologized that he couldn't go with her. He's going to go to the main city to finalize his career change. The girl exhaled and said that today is about on his own. Fang Tian was in the game in front of the hut. The main city of the 7th district, a city of ashes, a ruined city. A streak of blue light appeared. Fong moved into the city. He was standing near a statue. It seemed to be the Mage Madrina, who was said to have saved the ruined city at the cost of her life when the undead army attacked. He was standing in front of the gate, and beside him was a soldier he was talking to about something. Fong walked down the street and thought about the soldiers on guard duty, saying that all the teachers were in the northwest corner of the barracks. Near some house stood a masked man with a red coat and a hat on his head. Fan saw him. The man told Fan that if he wanted to become an assassin, then he would have to say something as an assassin, which is the most important thing to them. Fan replied that it was a death blow. The man was interested. He said no one can guarantee 100% success. Then what happens if Fan fails? He replied to run away from the target. The masked man responded by being chased and killed and running away thousands of miles away. That's so exciting. Fong tensed at his response. He received a notification congratulating the adventurer on completing the transition. Received the killer's starting gear. Maximum level unlocked. The player can learn skills from a mentor and assassin. After completing the quest, he needs to go through special dungeons to unlock the maximum level. For ability notifications appeared in front of Fan. He didn't realize that it was so expensive to learn skills from a mentor. Fortunately, he was prepared for it. He said that he needed to learn all these skills. The masked man smiled and said that Fan looked like fun and he could become an assassin. Fan found himself in a very bright place. He received a message that he had learned all the skills. He had become an assassin. Fan didn't expect it to be so easy. He wondered when that person would be able to teach him the real skills. Fong looked in his direction. His eyes and mouth began to glow purple through his mask. He was frightened by the sight. The assassin stood in front of Fan and grinned, asking his opinion on what real skill was. The assassin stood very close and Fan had his knives ready in his hand. Fan swung at him, right in front of the assassin's face. The knife swept through with a blue light. Fang Tian missed and jumped aside while the assassin stood still with his hands together behind his back. Fong realized that the man didn't move. Then why did he try to attack him? The assassin laughed at him, saying that Fan was very funny. But it wasn't time yet. He should go back when he was at level 50. He found himself back at the very spot where he originally met Fan. Said he might as well give it a try then. Fan knelt down across from him. He asked what kind of opportunity he was talking about. The guy didn't answer and said that was it for today. The skills that Fan had just learned did not have the soul prefix, which meant that, like that equipment, the effects would be nullified when entering the game. He appeared in the form of a human body, with light emanating from it along the body shell. Soul is most likely the true core of this game. Aside from equipment, only by learning soul skills can one truly increase one's strength. The man stood with his arms folded across his chest. Fong thought maybe he was hinting that he could train him, even if it's a bad skill. If one learned it now, it could help in the future. Fong thanked him and said that he would still come back here. He walked through the village. It was too long to climb to level 50 alone. He should find the fastest way. He remembered Lalu's words that the fastest way to level up was to find someone to take him alone, then do the quests. Fong looked at the notification to text his friends, namely Tang Chang and Luo. He didn't know what to do. This morning, Tang Chang said she was competing with her chemistry class. Luo Jianbing must be with her. They don't have time. He saw that he had Lalu and his friends, and realized that it was okay to ask her. The girl was filming herself at the time, telling subscribers that Lalu's show was about to start, so let them stay tuned. She saw that she got a text message. She realized it was Fang Tian and asked mentally what he wanted from her. Clicked on the message to read it. If he was trying to explain why he suddenly passed out yesterday, she might consider forgiving him. The message said that Fong was now at the city portal, asking for help raising his level. Lalu was angry that there was another request there, not an apology. With anger, she replied that she didn't have time. Fong only wrote "oh." She didn't understand what he meant by that. This guy can't be shy enough to hold a grudge. But the chairman told her to do the task. The girl stood in front of the chairman, who was sitting behind a desk. He was saying that the intelligence department analyzed the various indicators of this guy. The value of the growth potential is Fang Tian is S. In the entire 7th district. He is the 4th to receive this grade. He folded his hands into a lock and rested his head on them, leaning his elbows on the table. He didn't care how Lawala did it, but she had to lure this guy to their guild. Fong looked at the message Lalu had texted him again. She suggested as long as she finished the show and then she would help him. Fong agreed. He decided that while he waited for her, he would go and familiarize himself with the city. He would have to visit it more than once. He saw a room with a sign with a beer mug above the entrance. He remembered that he had been told that the tavern was the place to get all kinds of information. It had been in his childhood. He was sitting in a tavern as a little boy with a grown man who was drinking beer. He told him that almost every tavern had people in it. As long as they would spend money, take quests, or find out information, they would go there. But he warned little Fang Tian that such people only had two goals. One was to raise the price and the other was to get information. So when dealing with the Assassin's Guild, he should keep his mouth shut. Fang Tian entered the tavern. There were people sitting at the table. He walked over to the bar, sat down at a stool, and asked the bartender to pour him a red murder. The bartender was standing there wiping glasses. The bartender said he didn't think he'd seen him before. He asked where he heard the name. Fan replied that he wanted a map of the location of all the major monsters around. The bartender laughed and said that he seemed to know them well. He placed a glass of his red-colored drink in front of Fan. Said he was going to get his hands on some important things. This amount of information and experience was enough to take Fan to the next level. Fan lifted the glass up and agreed. He was notified that he had lost 103 gold coins, but also received a detailed map of the city's perimeter. The message said that powerful strength comes from hard training. He was tasked to witness the training of an assassin. Objective 1 is to kill creatures above his level 0 with 99.99. Objective 2 is to win the dueling arena 0 with 100. Objective 3 is to kill bosses above his level 0 with 10. Objective 4 is to kill elite level bosses that are 10 or more levels above his 0 with 1. The reward for this mission is a large amount of experience. The bartender wished him good luck in the battle. Fong asked him if there was any information about the shrine. He replied that it was very expensive since the information was from the vault. The bartender leaned closer to Fan. Fan asked how much it cost. The bartender replied that basic information costs 1 gold piece. Fan started to say that was too much and it was just basic information. He didn't need it. He declined and thanked him for his hospitality. In front of him were steps that led to a huge back room. Climbing up, he thought, almost every city has a central bank, and according to the clue key to a bank safe in a ruined city, it should be right here. Jane had said that Rafila's research had been abruptly interrupted and all the research data was stored here. He wondered what was recorded there. He headed towards the desk where a pretty girl was standing behind it. She asked how she could help him. Their bank does not charge fees for deposits and withdrawals, nor does it charge any interest. Fong picked up the key he had in his pocket and said he would like to open the safe. The girl was very surprised and apologized as she didn't know he was a VIP customer. She invited him to follow her. They entered the elevator. The arrow was pointing to B78. They got out and followed along. In front of them at the end of the room a man of old years was sitting at a desk. Fan placed his key on the table for him. The man began to examine it carefully. The girl bent down to look too. The man looked at her with a sharp look. She told Fan that his safe was only paid for 300 years of rent. Since he was a VIP, they extended another 300 years for him. He would need to pay a subsequent rent of 1,200 1,200 gold coins to retrieve the items in storage. Fong was surprised, as 1,200 was a lot. The girl replied that if he didn't come to pick it up the day after tomorrow, after 600 years, then according to the contract, the item would belong to their bank. Fong grudgingly repeated her words that it would have to be the day after tomorrow. According to Jane, the safe was the result of Rafila's research. Was it really worth 1,200 gold coins? He received a message from the system about the characteristics, namely strength 7, dexterity 9, intelligence 6, stamina 5, savvy 3. It would most likely be a continuation of the S-rank quest that would strengthen hidden and basic skills. He asked her to help him open it. The girl sweetly agreed. The man pointed the key in the air towards the lock of the safe. The key was already in the slot. The lock started to open. Fan walked forward. The girl said that any item in here he could take away. There was a red button near the entrance. If he needed anything, he could press it. Fong walked forward. Inside, a yellow circle on the floor with different symbols was waiting for him. In the middle of it stood a chest. Fan received a message that he had received an ancient chest. He opened it and wondered if it was the chest the necromancer had left behind. Inside lay a book. He received the notification that he had received the research data again. Fong sat cross-legged on the floor and began to read the contents in the book. There were pictures of creatures' lives drawn there. 3,000 years ago, in ancient times, when many kinds of creatures, including humans and elves, lived together, man had combined mechanical and alchemical technology to refine warriors. Man stood before a huge stone creature. They created a civilization that was second to none, a sanctuary. This advanced alchemical being is capable of allowing those with high beliefs to retain their own consciousness even after transformation. Not only was their power greatly increased, as long as they had a supply of energy, they had infinite life force. Unfortunately, like other races, it disappeared from the history of civilization. The girl walked near the shelves of books and picked out the one she wanted. During her investigation, Rafila discovered that the shrine still had information about her people, and she believed that this civilization was not truly extinct. It was just temporarily sealed in another time and space. She walked outside in a warm coat. Her shoe prints were left in the snow. To gain the power of an alchemical puppet to gain eternal life. She had even traveled to the far north to find the ruins of a shrine. Fang Tian abruptly closed the book and said that unfortunately, they had long since turned into a wasteland. He sat by himself in his cloak, with the book in his hands cross-legged. A look of surprise appeared on his face. He received a system prompt. He studied the skill, Soul * Elemental Alchemy LVL 1. Description: with this skill you can use all kinds of alchemical constructions, as well as increase the success rate of alchemical products 0.1%. He again received a prompt from the system. He studied the skill Soul, making a low-level gargoyle LVL 1. Low-level craft, level from 30 to 50. Crafting cost Mercury 1, Wood 3, Stone 6, Alchemical Rune 10, Recovery time 1 hour, Crafting success 30%. Additional note: stone gargoyles consume energy when in active form, but do not consume energy when in stone form. Skill: Soul Alchemical Dome Palm LVL 1. With this skill he can control up to 3 alchemical puppets at once. He held his hand over his head. This was as many as 3 skills in a row. Were they all really just mastered in this book? He looked at the message with the choice between assassin and alchemy. That's when a realization came to him. Everything was talking about alchemy. Stone gargoyles. It seemed like it should be an alchemy puppeteer. A guy who had his face covered was controlling the puppet with his hands. Alchemy flourished in the shrine, giving birth to a new profession, the alchemist puppeteer, a profession that specialized in fighting through the manipulation of various alchemical puppets. Alchemical puppets are not only immune to various spells, but also have extremely low damage received from both magic and physical attacks, making them very practical combat creatures. Even though the stone gargoyle was only a third-rate creature, it could fly and was excellent in aerial combat. Fong held the book in his hands and said that he should try this immediately. If it was possible to make a gargoyle, the 1,000 gold coins spent on it would be worth it. He put it back into the chest. A small light appeared in the palm of his hand. He said regarding this information, it was better to destroy it. The chest along with the book began to burn. There was a yellow light around him. He received a message from the system, saying that the key left behind by Rafila had been used. The reward for it was 5,000 experience points. His level was now upgraded and the player would receive 3 points. A small gold-colored sign fell to the floor. System hint: the next S-level stage is triggered by a mysterious rune fragment. A rune fragment of alchemical structure is obtained. Description: this thing looks a bit old, but it's well preserved. There are several parts of the fragment. Perhaps he can activate it by collecting the rest. Fang Tian thought for a moment. After all, there was no hint of the next step. Maybe then this is something he needs to find out for himself. A warning: the item is worth more than an S-rank item, and can be stolen by NPCs. One must be careful. Player choice can affect gameplay. Fong decided that he would forget about it. He would rather go learn the method of creating stone gargoyles first. If he can make enough of them and order them to kill monsters, his level up rate will certainly increase rapidly. Shin Lalu thanked the viewers for watching today's show. She told them that she would see them next time. The viewers wrote compliments to her in the comments. A blue ray appeared in the arena. He was also outside the building. Lalu walked out of the room looking tired. There was a guy sitting next to her at a table. The guy in black clothes who was also standing there said hello to her. The girl sat down in the chair, putting her foot on her leg. She said she would ask Fang Tian first and asked where he was. She wrote to him in chat saying that she had finished and was waiting for him to help him level up. He replied for her to help later. He needed 100 copies of each: mercury, wood, stone, and high-level alchemical runes. Lalu was angry with him. She said he was demanding a lot. That's when she thought about high-level alchemical runes. She wondered what kind of high-level stuff he was trying to make. She asked him in the chat room why he was trying to do this. He replied that it was material fabrication. She inquired what exactly to fabricate, to which he replied that it was confidential. The girl started to say that it won't work that way and let him tell everything. Fong replied that she has to help him in order to make an initial stage stone gargoyle. She started to think how this guy got this skill. This alchemy skill is extremely rare. She smiled slyly and wondered if she could only buy the skill or the finished product. Fang Tian pondered that this stone gargoyle was really expensive. It cost at least 10 gold coins just to make one, but he had already spent 7 or 8 of his gold coins. The girl wrote to him that everything except the runes is not a problem. It's just that high-level alchemical runes are expensive. He won't be able to give them for free. Each of them cost gold coins. He said he only had 98 coins. The girl agreed and said she would finance the rest. She would come as soon as she found the materials. They agreed to see each other at the artisan temple in town. The skill description said it only had a 30% success rate, so if Fong wanted to see the combat power of this stone gargoyle, he would have to make a lot of gargoyles. Lalu was waiting for him on the steps at the entrance of the temple. Fong was walking up to her. He approached her and asked why they were meeting here. She said that players come here to craft items such as potions, forging, and runes and can increase their success rate from 1 to 5%. Lalu opened a message with a choice to accept the transaction or reject it. Fong opened such a message as well. He saw that there was a price here, and he gave her all the money he had. The girl waved her hands to the sides and said that she knew that. That's why she sent 30 silver coins specifically to rent a hut for him. She said she had given him so much free materials already and he should repay her for it. He said he would later on about it. Lalu asked him where he got the skill from, what level it was, and if it could be reused. Fong got angry and said he learned the skill and couldn't trade it. Lalu got upset. He told her that creating a stone puppet shouldn't be a binder. The girl got very excited and said did that mean it could be traded. She returned to her previous calm state. She meant if this stone gargoyle was good, then he would have to make a stone gargoyle for their guild for free as a reward. Fang Tian replied that if he didn't learn how to control the puppet, he wouldn't be able to control the stone gargoyles. They walked down the corridor. Lalu was in front. She said that it was no big deal, since she had seen such skill books before. They weren't hard to learn, but if Fan failed, it would also improve his crafting skill. They reached the place they needed to go. Lalu opened the door and turned to face Fan to warn him that this was the place. They stepped inside. Fan had chalk in his hand and was drawing on the floor in a red circle and yellow symbols that was in the middle of the room. A glass of juice stood beside him. He read the description aloud: 1 drop of mercury, 3 trees, 6 stones, 10 high-level runes. Lalu watched him with the thought that this guy must have it all worked out. He placed his hand on the yellow symbols. There was an explosion in the middle of the circle. Everything was in smoke and they began to cover their noses from the foul odor. Lalu said that it was only the first time and they should try again. In her mind, she said that every time Fong failed, it was a waste of her money. Fang Tian imitated sitting and thought that it was not enough to just use a skill. That's when he realized that he could direct the flow of energy. He placed his 2 hands on the symbols, leaned closer to the ground. An increasingly bright light began to emanate from the circle. A yellow light appeared on his hands. He had succeeded. Fang Tian sat and waited. Lalu questioned him if it really worked. Fong was holding a picture in his hands. It showed a huge creature. Lalu got excited and asked what had worked. Fong replied that it was an alchemy card. In the game, in addition to using skills, there is a card type item. Usually they have some special effects. For example, the function of this card is to summon. The girl started shouting excitedly that he was too lucky. It was a summon card and needed to summon faster. Fong looked at the card and asked how he should use it. Here he was very surprised for some reason. He received a notification from the system asking him that the player had decided to summon an alchemical puppet. A hidden skill has been detected in the player. Tip: the player can try to activate the card. After activation, the player will be able to control this alchemical puppet with none. The alchemical puppet will also belong to the soul system. Lalu was impatiently waiting for him to act, but Fan couldn't make up his mind. If he summoned her, she would also belong to the soul system. But Uncle Hubbard had told him not to use the nin in front of others. Fan asked Lulu if she had ever heard of such a thing as nun. She hesitated and said that she had never heard of such a thing. Immediately her state changed back to joyful and said stop wasting time and show her how strong the stone gargoyles were. Fong realized that of course they didn't know what a Shin was and decided to forget about it. He decided to try using mental energy. A wind began to rise around him, his hair and cloak being blown about. In the hand in front of his face held a map. A bright light was coming from it. Everything in the room was blinded by the bright light that they even covered their eyes with their hand. The monster that was depicted on the map appeared in front of them. A message came in with its information. It was a creature, stone gargoyle rank 3 LVL 37, strength 93, dexterity 102, stamina 70, life expectancy 1320, skills henge bite, uses the bite to attack from the air, increases attack frequency by 100% and attack power by 30%. Purge, there are puppets that use the purge skill to increase their physical defense by 100 to 200%. Activates immunity to all spell attacks, increases the rate of HP recovery by 100%, also reduces energy loss. Passive skills, group attack, every time the number of puppets is increased by 300. Another 1% is added to the skill up to 100% skill increase. Full body, the puppet's body is made of hard stone which increases physical resistance from 10% to 20%. Sha, due to player level restrictions, a player-controlled gargoyle can only be level 14. Lalu directed her vision to read information from it. She exclaimed that it was a baby. One level 37 gargoyle, not very fancy, but once created, it will gradually increase its level. In addition, it can fight in the air, so if Fong created a legion of gargoyles, it would definitely be better. Lalu pointed the camera at the gargoyle and said that she would have to send the picture to the guild as soon as possible so that the president could analyze the creation of the legion. She looked at Fan and said that this guy was an untapped gold mine. Fang Tian said that this stone gargoyle didn't look strong, but the crafting skill just went from level 1 to level 2, and the success rate increased a little. He suggested to just finish creating the others. They walked through the village together, with the gargoyle flying overhead behind them. Lalu told him that she didn't realize he had a talent for alchemy. They turned around and looked at the gargoyle. Fong said he didn't expect that she couldn't be shoved back in after summoning. It's not very beneficial. It moves and consumes energy if you look at it that way. Some guy ran up to them and started on about how he never thought he'd ever see a live gargoyle. He asked if it was for sale or not. Lalu, without letting Fan answer, said it was a quest reward. The rest was guild secret so she couldn't tell him. Lalu looked at Fan and asked what they should do now. Fan asked her to help him level up. He has a quest that requires him to kill 9,999 monsters. She can help him complete the quest. Lulu thought about it since they need to find a good place to level up. Killing monsters less than level 10 won't give any experience. She said that his attack power is too low, and if he can't kill a monster, both of them will be in danger and could easily die, and the death penalty is too big to risk. Fang Tian asked if she had any group skills to attack monsters. Then he would be able to make the final strike. But would he get experience points then? She replied that yes, as long as they are together in a group. The experience is distributed equally among all the members in the battle radius. Fong said that it was okay to go then. Lalu asked where to go. Fong had already gone ahead and answered on the go to level up. Valley of the Lost. An empty place without people with only rocks and stones. There were lizards crawling between the rocks. Lulu saw them and said that they couldn't do anything since sand lizards are immune to poisons. Fong answered her that this is the Valley of the Lost, the habitat of poisonous sand lizards. They are also immune to 20% magic attacks. If you get attacked, you'll have to work hard not to die. The player's attacks have 20% and 40% hit success, and also spend 3 points per second. Lulu wondered how he knew so much. Fong replied, as he said, the poison sand lizard has low not much XP, but it has a high movement speed, which can save a lot of time. Most importantly, the map provided by the bartender marked the points where there is a chance to get pieces of the desert treasure map. Fan firmly said that as long as they collected all 50 pieces of the desert treasure map, they wouldn't leave there. He took out a dagger from his pocket and said that he should start pumping and would try to kill the poisonous sand lizard. He headed towards his goal. He ran sharply. Lulu shouted after him that he was an idiot and he shouldn't do that. Fan didn't listen to her. He used the invisibility skill on the move. Lulu rubbed her eyes as she couldn't believe what she was seeing. After all, the invisibility skill is kind of not used while stationary. How could he use it while moving? The poisonous sand lizard stood still. Fong jumped on one of them and stuck a dagger into its back. The others screamed. He thought about the fact that although the card was expensive, but it was worth this gold. Buying the card was the right decision. The lizard opened its mouth to face Fan, but he plunged the dagger into its back again and blood spurted out. The lizard fell dead. Fong said that the poisonous sand lizard's death point was on that pale red center line, pointing to the line that ran through her entire body down the middle of her back. He placed his foot on its dead body. The next lizard opened its jaws and lunged towards Fan to hurt him. He jumped on its back and plunged his dagger into that deadly line. He was already standing among the dead bodies, blood dripping from his weapon. It turned out that level 32 monsters were wild monsters, not much different from normal monsters. Lulu jumped to him from the rock with thoughts that this guy was too strong. He had destroyed a poisonous sand lizard in 2 seconds, a monster that was almost 20 levels of his. Just like last time, maybe he's playing for fun. Fan asked Lulu how much XP her divine skill can restore at one time, to which she replied about 700. But if it's an explosion, then it's around 1000. He just tested the lizard attacks. They don't move that fast, and it seems they only have 2 main attacks, the forelimb attack and the poison attack. The amount of HP of the poisonous sand lizard is around 1200, so Lalu won't be able to kill them so easily. So his ability is great to take care of the remaining lizards. The girl tried to destroy the lizard with all her might, but it was difficult to do so. She replied that it meant that with each attack, one deadly blow he would have to take off at least 500 points. She asked if he was sure he wasn't bullying her. Fan watched the message about the combo master. He told Lalu that his combo mastery was a passive skill. The more combos, the higher the damage. Lalu agreed. Fan said it was time to start. He ran forward. Lalu was ready as well. Everything was in purple light. There were 4 lizards in front of them, with red stripes above them denoting their strength level. Fan quickly started killing them all in a streak on their backs. Lalu watched him and wondered how he was able to do this. If this was a team battle, Fang Tian should be a teammate to rely on. Someone called out to her. It was the chairman. She was surprised by his call and was distracted from the battle. Fan turned to her and asked why she was distracted. She smiled sweetly and said that someone called her. She asked him to collect the treasures dropped from the monsters for now and she would join soon. On top of a rock sat his gargoyle. Fan received many notifications at once that the player was getting a sand lizard tail. He had already spent a lot of gold coins to create stone gargoyles, and selling these sand lizard tails was just the thing to get even more coins. He received a notification that the player was receiving a treasure map fragment and a new map appeared in his inventory. Fan didn't understand what it was. Description: Desert Valley Treasure Map Fragment. It's not for sale. 24 hours remaining disappearance time. Hint: you'll need 50 pieces of treasure map to create a complete treasure map. Fong assumed it was the treasure map mentioned in the map the bartender gave him. Lalu answered the phone and addressed him as the president, asking if he had already decided. The chairman replied that he had. He sat in front of a computer screen that showed a picture of the gargoyle that Fang Tian had created. He told Lal that the Intelligence and Analysis Department had come to a conclusion and they had decided to create a gargoyle legion. Although gargoyles are at a low level, if there are many of them, are capable of many things. He folded his hands into a lock and placed his elbows on the table. He said that as long as they didn't control the air, the strength of their guild would increase greatly, and in the future they would not only be able to win the first 60 levels, but could even build their own city. He turned to Lual and said that she should make every effort to recruit Fang Tian. Only by firmly tying him to their ship would they be able to guarantee the smooth implementation of the plan. Lualu replied that she would guarantee the completion of the mission. Fong took the severed tail from the lizard in his hands. Lalu stood behind and thought about the fact that becoming the head of one city the chairman had already planned. She didn't expect a rookie with a small level to give their guild a chance to level up. She thought about the fact that now he would be able to kill a level 30 monster on his own. She thought, then how about level 60? She is going to get this guy's level to level 60 as soon as possible, and then he will definitely be a huge help to the guild. Fong walked up to her and asked her what was wrong. He asked why she was looking at him like that. She replied, cheerfully as always, that it was nothing. Asked if he was done packing. Said that when he was done packing, they would keep going up. Fong stood among the slain lizards. Non-soul skills could increase proficiency as long as they were used, regardless of whether he attacked or not. It was a little different. He received a notification that Tang Chang's player was starting a voice call. He didn't have time to answer before she shouted in surprise at his level 20 account. He said he had someone helping him, so he was pumping faster. Tang Chang told him to come down for dinner, to which Fong replied that he would be right there. He warned Lalu that he was going to eat and if she minded. Lalu said she thought they were made of iron, but it turns out they need to eat too. She asked if he wanted to continue after dinner. Fan replied that they weren't done working yet, so of course they would continue. They agreed to see each other at 6:30. Then he remembered that he wanted to ask her something else, if she knew what treasures could be found if she collected the map. Lulu was ready to move, standing in a beam of blue light and holding a teleportation scroll. She answered him that once the time limit expired, the previous treasure map would disappear, but unless she was wrong, he could try again. Many people tried to collect the map, but they failed. In front of him was the map he had gotten, which led to a certain reward. He wondered to himself that, in other words, it meant that no one knew what was in the treasury. Fang Tian opened the door to the kitchen. Tang Chang was already setting the table and called out for him to eat. She held a bowl of rice in her hand and said that they had beaten the chemistry class again today. There was also dinner on the table the same way. He was holding chopsticks and a bowl of rice. Replied that they were amazing. The girl proudly agreed. She decided to tell him in confidence that Chinyu, the vice president of their school's cyber sports club, showed up at the internet cafe today and watched the game next to her. She asked Fan for his opinion on why she might have been at the internet cafe. Fan inhaled and said he didn't know. Tang Chang said that the club is recruiting. There are so many seniors leaving the club this year. Chinyu must be looking for good players. She approached him that the cyber sports club is rotating recruitment next week, asking if he would like to join her. With him paired with her, they would have a chance. Fong replied that he would tell her a little later. They continued eating rice with bamboo chopsticks. Tang Chang placed the empty bowl on the table. She bent her arm at the elbow, showing her muscles. She said that she had to train for the club recruitment, so let him decide in advance. Fong replied okay. He wondered about the cyber sports club. Doesn't seem interesting, she said. We'll see what happens next. He grasped his left shoulder with his hand. His body has been a bit tense lately. He can't seem to work on the physicality of his body entering the game through his helmet. There's still time until tonight. He decided to go for a run to keep in shape. A kid appeared in front of him. In his hand was a lollipop on a stick. He held out his hand with a note and said that someone had asked him to bring it to him. Fang Tian was surprised. He unfolded a sheet that was folded in half, which had Cyber Sports Club, 3 dragons written on it. He crouched down to be level with the boy and asked who gave him this note. The boy replied that it was some weirdo. He gave him a lollipop and told him that fun would be held here. The boy turned around and walked away. Fong watched him with the note in his hands and thought that they wanted him to join the Cyber Sports Club. Then who could have passed the note? A blue ray appeared. It was Fang Tian arriving at the place where he and Lalu were before he left. Lalu was already there and said that he had arrived just in time. Fong said it was time to finish what he started already. Lalu smiled awkwardly. She had forgotten to tell him earlier that she would have airings every weekend night. He asked what she meant by that. She asked him if he had seen the game live. It's just that everything they do now will be visible to other players. Fan said there was no problem. The girl thought about Fang Tian being the secret weapon she had discovered. What would happen if the other guilds found out about him during the broadcast? Maybe he would already be ready to join their guild. Fan asked her what the problem was. She asked him why doesn't he join their guild. She would be embarrassed if people saw that she was helping a newcomer but not helping people from her own guild. She warned him that there were many benefits to joining the guild. Fang Tian didn't know what exactly the guild was for, but they're too slow pumping alone. But if he is wrong and they can maintain such a high speed, it doesn't matter if he joins or not. Lalu said that the guild is an organization created by players. Same interests, is the driving force of unity and mutual help. Also he will be able to make a lot of friends. Fong asked if any evaluation was required to join their guild. Inside, Lalu was happy that he said yes. She was overwhelmed with emotion. She praised herself for doing a great job. The vid didn't show it. She replied that it would initially require an evaluation, but she knows his strength and can give him a recommendation. Fan received a notification that he was being invited to join a guild. Current guild level, LVL 4, with a choice to accept or decline. Fong clicked on the accept choice. He received a notification that he had joined a star guild. Hostile guild level, none. Current guild status, peaceful. Guild territories, none. There were many messages in front of him with the words welcome. He pressed the button to silence the guild chat so he wouldn't be disturbed by the messages. Fong asked Lulu if they could start. The girl picked up the camera and said she would take care of the rest herself. The camera hung in the air. She looked into it and said hello to the audience. She said that she had come a long way to bring a newcomer into their guild. The spectators started discussing it in the comments. Lalu happily introduced Fan to the camera. Fan was as serious as ever. Poison lizards appeared in front of the camera. The audience started asking why go to the Valley of the Lost with the newcomer, and if the girl really went there with him to help. The girl shouted that it was time to go into battle. She pointed her weapon at the lizards with the sharp side. Above them was a red streak that showed halfway up. The onlookers started writing that they should be finished off since they were still alive. She was told to run away as the sand lizard that was still alive was already very close to her. A blue light appeared and the lizard was cut to pieces. It was killed by Fong. Some of the onlookers started asking questions afterward what the newcomer's profession was, and some started praising him for his good work. Lalu thought about how this guy is really good. Every attack not only is critical, but they are all deadly. Fong stuck the dagger of one of the lizards into its sore spot on its back, placed his foot on its dead body. Suddenly he saw the valley begin to crumble. Rocks began to fall down from the small mountains. Fong was frightened. Lulu thought they were on a break. While Fong shouted to her to be careful, she was about to fall. But Fan managed to support her by her waist. The audience started texting him to let go of her, remove his hands and such. A huge monster, something like a beetle, appeared in front of them. The audience realized it was the boss. They cheered them on. Lalu stood next to Fan. She told him that it was a level 30 boss, a poison scorpion. This guy had high damage and lots of XP. He would need a team of at least 5 level 40 people. Fan asked what they should do now. The audience cheered that they had met a new boss and said that they believed in Lalu's strength. Fan only had to agree to try and kill the boss. He was serious about it. Lalu started to resent him about his decision to try. She said that the two of them wouldn't be able to handle that big scorpion. Fong replied that defeating the boss would surely bring many rewards. Since there is no real death here, then what is there to fear? He ran into the battle. Lalu only had time to shout his name. The audience wrote that Fan was finished since this boss is very strong, but someone still supported him. Lalu decided that since he was in the fight, she couldn't back down. Fang Tian attacked the boss. The desolate scorpion's body is completely surrounded by a hard shell. If Fan wanted to deal a lot of damage, he would have to do a combo. The scorpion almost hit Fan with its claw, but Fan managed to dodge the blow. Fan swiped his claw with his dagger and dealt 120 damage to it. This creature was not on the map the bartender had given him. He must find out where the scorpion's weaknesses were as soon as possible. The sharp end of the scorpion's tail was visible in front of Fan. They weren't standing very close to each other. Lalu watched and called out to him that the scorpion's weaknesses were in its tail and belly. Fong replied that he understood her. He found himself in the gorge between the walls, inserted his dagger into the stone wall to hold onto it so he wouldn't fall. Lalu was struggling with a scorpion. She shouted to Fang Tian that the control time was 3 seconds. Fang Tian was in a fight, thus showing off his skills to the audience. Everyone was writing about how he was a born killer. Fan was doing well and showing great damage. Lalu was surprised at how big the damage was. Was he really a beginner? Above the scorpion was a bar that showed the rest of his power. It showed less than half. The scorpion covered its head with its front paws. Its health was starting to recover. Lalu said that the desert scorpion was hiding its weaknesses. It would be hard to deal as much damage as before. If it continued like this, the XP that was so hard to knock down would slowly climb up. Fan replied that his level was still too low. He should increase it. Fong interrogated the girl. Don't they have stone gargoyles yet? Lalu queried if he wanted to summon them. Fong stood and crossed his arms. He held up 2 cards. The gargoyles appeared. A yellow light appeared behind Fan and gargoyles flew. The spectators began to write their guesses as to what these creatures were. Fan ordered them to run into battle. The gargoyles ran forward. They swooped down on the sand scorpion and began to attack. The air units are awesome. The scorpion is just getting beaten up. The scorpion tried to fight them off. Fong started running in his hands too with his dagger ready to attack. He threw a combo strike at the scorpion. The onlookers admired him. It had 10% of its HP left. The boss was about to make his move. Lulu yelled caution to Fan. His feet began to get sucked into the sand. He received a notification that he had entered the center of quicksand. The dust affected his absorption rate by 30%, reducing his maximum XP gain by 5% per second. Many small scorpions began to emerge from the sand. Lalu said that they didn't have enough skills for that many small scorpions. Fong attacked the scorpions, their claws flying off of them. He received a notification that his spells and ranged attacks were reduced by 50% due to the effect of the sand. He remembered the master's words about the more dangerous he was, the calmer he was. The resistance seemed to weaken when he cast a spell. Fong bounced off the ground. He ended up on the belly of the boss scorpion. He plunged his dagger into its belly. The onlookers were shocked by his action. The boss's HP level began to drop rapidly as it was his weak point. Fong slashed the scorpion's stomach along its body. It worked to destroy it. Lalu couldn't believe he actually did that. Fong received a notification that his level had been raised and he had received 3 skill points, which was repeated 2 more times. There was a huge yellow puddle in the place of the dead scorpion. The spectators asked him to collect the treasure. Lalu asked what he had gotten from the boss. Lulu said that some good items fell out to him. They are level 40 to 50, but she doesn't know anything about the key and the powerful soul. He said he needed this gear, except for this dagger. He decided to sell it and get some gold for it. He looked at the map and said he had collected all the pieces of the treasure map, but there was no clue what to do next. He asked Lulu if she knew what to do. She couldn't believe that Fan was actually able to collect everything. There were many pieces of cards in front of Fan. All the symbols were the same and you have to connect all the lines with each other. He remembered that Uncle Hubbard had mentioned that there was some kind of treasure map that was labeled, and the markings on it could only be seen by reading it. He thought perhaps this was it. He closed his eyes. A small circle appeared on his forehead with a dot inside. His eyes turned red and a yellow light emanated from his body. He stood in front of the scattered pieces of cards that hung in the air in front of his face. Fan's body was elated. He stood with his eyes closed, blue lightning bolts behind him. As expected, you can see through the Shin, each piece with a certain pattern. You need to put them together. He began to distribute the pieces. Nen consumes more energy than LN thought. Need to put the map together sooner. He received a notification that he had successfully assembled the treasure map. Fong held his hand on his head with fatigue. Lulu came over to him, looked at the collected map and asked how he did it. A huge yellow-colored pyramid appeared in front of them. A notification came that a player had initiated a treasure map quest. He is authorized to enter the dungeon, which will disappear after 3 hours. Steps appeared in front of them that led deep underground. The onlookers asked questions about how he managed to unlock the treasure map since the last guild that tried to collect it had failed. They peered down to where the steps led. Fong figured it was sealed in the ground. Lalu replied that she had never seen such a strange quest before. The spectators told him to go see what the treasure was. Sweat broke out on Fan's face. He didn't look very healthy. Lulu supported him with her hand so he wouldn't fall and asked him what was happening to him. Fan felt sick, but he replied that he was fine. He realized that he couldn't use any more UNN. If he continued to spend too much, it could jeopardize his life. Lalu offered to go downstairs, and if a monster stronger than a desert scorpion showed up, they'd better leave. Fong reminded him that this place had a time limit, so it was time to go check it out. They were watched by his gargoyles, who sat quietly. They started down the steps to the bottom of the stairs. Lalu looked around and said that the cave was so deep that there was no telling when they would arrive. Fong stopped abruptly. Lalu didn't notice it right away and crashed into him from behind. Lalu asked what was going on. Fong told her to be quiet and listen to the silence. Out of the darkness, a monster with red eyes that looked like a rat crawled out at them. Fong immediately threw his dagger at it, which hit the monster in the head and it fell. Fong looked at the dead body and said that luckily it was just a rat with a very low level. They went on their way. Fan said that cave rats had a fishy personality and a strong sense of territoriality. 3 large crates appeared in front of them. Fan walked closer to them and asked Lalu if she had seen one before. Lalu replied that she had never been to such places and this was the first time she had seen it. She thought about why when she is with Fang Tian, she keeps encountering strange things. Fan began to examine them. These coffins were made of some special material. These patterns on them were a formation, or was it just their decoration? Lulu offered to open them up and see what was inside. Fan replied that in this mode, the worst result is the death of a game character that can be resurrected after 3 days, so she'll try opening it. A green mist started to come out from under the coffin lids. The guys started to back away. A notification came in that the player had started a special mission. The name of the task: closed coffins. Description: through the treasure map, he found 3 coffins in front of him. A notification popped up and read that an error had been detected. An anomaly was detected in the game. Lalu asked what the anomalies meant. Fan said that it was something wrong with the coffins and one should be careful. The coffins became vertical. The lids fell to the floor. Inside were 3 mummies. A mummy is an undead fighting unit. She has a lot of power in her body. She is extremely difficult to defeat. As long as she's awake, she's most vulnerable, so they need to be attacked right now. The guys started the fight. Lalu directed the divine discipline spell at them. The purple light almost hit the forehead of one of the mummies, but she managed to catch it in her hand, clenched it into a fist and flattened the ball of spell light. Lalu didn't understand how the mummy did it. What kind of monster was it that suppressed her attack? Fan at this time wanted to attack one of the mummies from behind. The mummy noticed it. Fan was scared of what she was about to do. He stopped beside Lalu and said that the mummy could see through skills. She was strong. One of the mummies spoke to them. She only uttered words about them coming from outside. The mummy said questioningly that they were outsiders. A tall building in the city. A black helicopter flew near it. T-27 command sector. The guild chairman was sitting at a computer. His assistant stood next to him with a cup in her hand. She addressed him as commander and said that he hadn't slept for days and nights. Why didn't he get some rest? He said that they could not let their guard down. The desert scorpion incident could not be allowed to happen again. He picked up the cup the girl had given him. She said that there hadn't been any situations lately. Before the girl could finish speaking, the computer screen flashed a red light with error written on it. It was a level a danger warning. The location of the Valley of the Lost. Coordinates: a 2030 S2109. The girl was startled. The chairman got angry. This was a normal level pumping place. How could an abnormal reaction suddenly appear there? He started yelling to send someone there immediately. Lalu and Fan were standing in front of the mummies. Lalu said that NPCs with high intelligence levels usually regarded all players as outsiders. Fan said that it looked like this mummy was one of them. The girl warned to be careful as it is powerful. The mummy asked that if it entered from outside, then they have a key to open their chains. She reached out her hand to get the key. Her legs were shackled with a chain that needed a key. Fong wondered what key he was talking about. He took the key out of his pocket and asked if it was the key he was talking about. The mummy immediately realized that this was what was needed. It rushed towards Fan, but was prevented from doing so by the chains that held it. He began to offer Fan any power or wealth if he would give him the key. He shouted that he could even become his servant. Lalu thought about how if someone hired a high-level NPC, Fang Tian's Saida would definitely skyrocket. She appealed to Fan that he should give him the key and make him a servant. If it was true, he would be able to raise the level even faster. Fan shouted to the mummy that he would give him the key if he proved it to him by making a soul oath. He replied to Fan that he was smart. Once the soul oath was signed, not only would he not be able to kill Fan, but his life would be in Fang Tian's hands. The mummy replied that to get the key, he had many more ways. There was a black puddle under his feet. Fan saw it. He jumped up so it wouldn't hit his feet. Said he knew he couldn't be trusted. Lalu began to have her legs bound by the black puddle. She didn't realize what the skill was. It engulfed her whole body. She couldn't get out. A notification came in that the player was currently in absolute confinement. The confinement could not be dispelled. Fan asked if she was okay. She replied that the game was telling her she was in confinement. She couldn't move, and dispelling spells was not possible. Fong pondered the fact that the mummy's spells contagion, and normal spells were ineffective against it. Fortunately, the iron cables are holding him back, so he won't go near them. Fong was too weak to defeat him. He didn't understand what he should do in this situation. Mummy said, suddenly thinking of an interesting deal. He jabbed his finger towards Lalu and asked about her. She's Fan's companion of sorts. Then how about trading the companion's life for the key? Lalu yelled for Fan to agree as he is cheating him. He's trapped now and won't be able to hurt her. Mummy smiled and asked her if she really thought so. He snapped his fingers and said why don't they check it out. The black bands that held Lala began to squeeze her. Above her was a red band that signified her amount of health. This band was getting smaller and smaller. She didn't realize what was happening. The girl tried to break free, but it was hopeless. The mummy told Fan that he didn't have much time. He needed to choose Lala's life or the key as soon as possible. She screamed at Fan to leave her. Worst case scenario, he would die and not be able to enter the game for days. The mummy scoffed. He said people think too easily. He knows they have a special method to make the soul temporarily leave the body, so he just blocked Lalu's soul. Her body was bandaged completely. He told Fan that if she died now, her soul would never return to her body. Fan should understand the consequences. Fang Tian shouted to him that he agreed, but first he must let her go. Then he would get his key. The mummy shouted that he would get the key first, then he would let them go. Fong held the key in his hand and yelled back at him that there is only one key. If she dies, he will never get it. Mummy let go of his anger. He said he wasn't going to fight them. He just wanted their key and asked Fan to keep his promise. Lala let go. Fan immediately ran up to her. He lifted her to her feet. Lalu, tired, asked if he really wanted to finalize the deal. Fong replied that they couldn't be sure he would attack them. They needed to leave quickly. Mummy reminded him that now it was time to give him the key. Fong threw him the key. Suddenly, an arrow flew near his face and someone shouted, "Don't give up," from behind him. The arrow hit the mummy and an explosion sounded. Fong turned around and asked if it was the archer. Fong asked himself when he got there, and how could he not see him? There was a guy sitting on the mountain with a bow. Fong realized that the one had killed him. That's the assassin. A man in black clothes with 2 knives in his hands landed on the coffin with the mummy. It was unknown what kind of people they were. The girl sat on the mummy's back and pointed the weapons at her. The girl was about to stick 2 knives into the mummy. Fong and Lalu were watching this. He was talking about how it was a pity that he released his killing aura at the very end of the attack. It gave the enemy a chance to react. Fong stood and thought about the fact that this was a brutal clash, yet they still had a warrior. Mummy had put up a defense in the form of a ball that was around him and prevented the opponents from getting close to him. But they tried to destroy this defense ball. A girl with glasses became nearby. She told Fan to take the powerless Lala and leave immediately. She recommended that they not tell anyone about what happened here today. Fan replied that he understood that perfectly well. Mummy yelled at him to tell Fong, "Don't leave. It's so hard to find someone who can break the seal with a key." He begged him to stop, offering to grant him the most ancient power. Fong was already heading for the exit and led Lulu under his arm. He replied to him that having this kind of power he could get it himself. The mummy shouted at the top of his voice, removing his defenses. Fong walked away, with the girl behind him watching the mummy's destruction. They walked outside. Fong thought about the fact that he didn't understand at all how this bandaged man's sciences affected Chunlolo. He realized that they were also skilled in mind control, and they could handle something like this better than the current him. Fang Tian was walking down the corridor of the school. A joyful Luo ran up to him and held a white sheet in his hands. He said that he received an autographed photo from Chunlolo yesterday. Fan thought about the fact that after Chunlolo woke up yesterday, they all blacked out and he doesn't know what happened afterward. Luo put his hand on Fan's shoulder and told him not to get so upset. Next time he will bet for him too. He said that the electronic competition club had started recruiting new members and suggested Fan to go there. They can't miss out on something like this after all. Gym. The guys were standing in line for a table where someone was sitting. Some of them resented why there were so many people, since it's kind of like a basketball court. Luo explained that the purpose of cybersports is for high schoolers to compete in competitions held by the big leagues, and the purpose of recruiting is to select higher-ranked players with more talent. The school attaches great importance to this and, in particular, contributes to the establishment by dedicating the school's largest indoor basketball court for selections. Tang Chang saw Fang Tian and was happy about it. She had 2 white sheets in her hands. She handed the 2 sheets to them. She looked at Fan and asked why he was so slow. Since the registration had already started, they should do it again. Fan put 1 sheet on Luo's back and signed it. Luo said that it seems like this year the number of newcomers to the electronic competition club has doubled. They might see a cool show this time. Fong asked him if there was a person named Luan San in the e-petition club. Tang Chang replied that she had never heard of such a person. She asked how Fong knew this and if the person he asked about was famous. Fong said that it didn't matter and that he might have misremembered. They continued to stand in line. Fan took out a note with the name Luan San from his pocket and looked at it again. There was no such name of a person in the club that would give him a message. He wondered what he should do then. A girl and a man were sitting on a bench in the gym watching the queue. The girl had pink headphones on and was holding a sheet to write down information. The man also had a sheet to take notes on. The girl addressed him as Captain Shui Yang. He said that there were only 3 masters who could trigger the full freedom mode. It wasn't that bad. Well, almost. She told him not to let her take things into her own hands as a mentor. Although Shui Yang has some natural talents, but his style is hot-tempered and willful, and he never participate in club activities. It's just childish stubbornness of some kind. She went on to say that many of the team members graduated this year, and the team is far from full strength, and she thinks they don't really want to go to the regional quarterfinals this time around. The man asked her who Fang Tian was and why he was being singled out so much. She told him that Fang Tian is a freshman who transferred to their middle school this year. She heard from Luha from the team that he and Fang Tian had a one-on-one match. In his estimation, Fang Tian should be a player capable of using free mode. The man replied to Qin Ming that if this was true, they would have 4 players in completely free mode, for her not to say anything else about him. Reaching the quarterfinals would be easy. She said that there is more than one person on the team, as it is a team competition after all. Shui Yang at least won't be able to affect the whole team's momentum so easily. As for Fang Tian, although she doesn't know his skills, but she heard that he's not a high rank and he's a cold-blooded killer. She said that she wasn't particularly optimistic. The man put his hands together and rested his chin on them. He said with a serious face that they didn't know yet how much he was rated alone or on a team. The newcomers aren't very strong right now, but they can nurture these sprouts into mighty trees, and asked the girl if she agreed. Fong stood and thought about the fact that the school had put a lot of effort into the event so that they could participate, and they hoped that the boys wouldn't let them down and could make the team. The man said that it was okay for Qin Ming not to think much about it. They would all see everything perfectly fine later. It was Fan's turn. He walked over to the table where the guy with glasses was sitting. He smiled at Fan and asked if he was the powerful newcomer according to Luha. He said hello to him and introduced himself. His name was Mu Rong and he was a senior in their school. Fong said hello in return, holding out a piece of paper. The sheet had a guild written on it, namely the Stardust Guild. Mu Rong looked at the name of the guild and thought, Stardust is a big guild after all, and the requirements to join are quite high. This Fang Tian looks ordinary. He didn't expect Fong to become a member of a star guild at level 20. It seemed to him that there was something really extraordinary here. He told Fan that he had heard that he had transferred to their school this year. Asked if he had been involved in any community activities before. Fan replied no. Mu Rong smiled sweetly again and began to tell. The main goal of their club is not to get good equipment, but to improve their personal skills through PvP between the members. Fan asked what PvP means. He replied that PvP is a battle between players. After new user registration is completed, old club members will compete against other players, or against each other. During the battles, one can analyze each other's strengths and weaknesses, degree of acquiescence, synchronization of actions, etc., to determine if they are eligible to join the community. Mu Rong fixed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and said that Fan had already passed the registration. He could now play the 1vs1 game with him. Fan asked if they were to play here and now. The guy replied that this was a temporary playground specially prepared by their club to recruit newcomers. Since the formalities have been met, then why don't they be the first to start? Fong agreed and said that he didn't need to offer twice. On the battlefield, Mu Rong stood with a sword in his hand. He was shouting about where the opponent had gone and whether he had already used the assassin's technique. When the sneaking assassin attacks, it will appear in its original form. As long as there was an opportunity, the assassin would avoid direct confrontation against the warrior. Fang Tian was sitting on a branch on a tree. The type of warrior who is a swordsman is different from a fighter with an axe or a large sword. His opponent has both reinforcement and control. However, his entire body is exposed. It seems like he is a beginner. Fong took hold of the handle of his dagger, striking his opponent with the hilt. Fong stunned Mu Rong. He held onto the handle and thought that if he hit his opponent in the face with it, it would stun him for 3-5 seconds. Fong just decided to try out new skills. While Mu Rong was moving away from the blow, Fong was standing behind him. This skill can also disorient your opponent so that you can control the whole situation as a whole. This is a very powerful control skill. Fong gave him a blow to his back. His remaining life force was showing at half of what was possible. Of course, as Lu has said, the killer's output was too frightening. Mu Rong started swinging his sword in a circle and leaving yellow sword marks. Fang Tian fell to his knees while his opponent had already hammered at him to strike. Mu Rong missed and hit the ground. Fong managed to escape. Zhang was annoyed by this, but he didn't give up. Fong quickly moved around. Although every attack from Fang Tian is a critical hit, this strong stealth skill has a long recovery time. Right now, Mu Rong had half of his health left. Let's see what else Fan has to fight him. Mu Rong crouched down on one knee. Fan realized that he rushed to try out his new skills and now they are on recovery. and he can't use his new skill in this situation. He can't dodge now. The opponent swung his sword at Fan by his head with a deadly burst. In the chair opposite each other sat Fang Tian and Mu Rong. On their heads was a helmet for the game, and beside them was a huge screen that showed their game. The man turned to Shin and asked her opinion. She pondered. Using the hilt strike technique to ogle an opponent was the level of a professional competition. The man told her that although it was Fang Tian who was well versed in full freedom mode, the combat efficiency of his talent was not very good, and it might be due to his fighting style. The girl seriously thought about it. It seems like what he's looking for is a brutal show of strength. There's also a problem with skill utilization. However, after practicing, the actual strength can be greatly improved. It seems she had underestimated him before. The man emphasized again on the fact that Fang Tian was indeed a very promising guy. Fan took off his helmet. Mu Rong told him that he was really amazing. He thought that Lu Ho was bragging. If it wasn't for Mu Rong's professional skills and experience, he wouldn't have been able to defeat Fan. Seeing how talented Fan was, Mu Rong asked if it was worth going into full freedom mode. Fan said that it was. They shook hands. Mu Rong gave Fan a thumbs up and said he hoped he could join them and then they would become teammates. Fan was walking through the school going down the steps. He kept thinking about how he was careless and treated his opponent as a beginner. He practiced and used various skills but didn't kill his opponent when he had the opportunity. He remembered the words he had once been told that when a person thought he was safe, it meant he wasn't far from death. Fong decided that he had relaxed lately. Something like this should never happen again. Lo put his hand on Fan's shoulder and said that he seemed to have relaxed lately. This should never happen again. Fan didn't listen to him. Tang Chang came over to them. Luo told him that Mu Rong and Lu He were equal in strength, but if Fang acted as usual, he would definitely win. This time his speed had clearly decreased. He used his skills too early, asked why he didn't just hide. Fang smiled embarrassedly and answered him that it would hardly help. Mu Rong really outplayed him soundly. Luo looked at the tablet and yelled out that another big event had happened in the game. On the screen, a place was vandalized, which read, "There was a huge explosion in the Lost Valley that turned everything into ruins overnight. What is the mission behind this?" Fang Tian looked at the ruined place. The explosion that happened in the early morning forum happened right after he left. He doesn't know what happened afterward. He received a notification that he had gotten a teleport from a certain place, presented by Lalu. The dried up swamp, in 3C8, is looming. He looked at the map and thought about the fact that the swamp of dried bones was a level 55 area. In the depths of the swamp, it was impossible to use the location system because of the poisonous gas. The location sent to him by Shin Lualu should be outside the swamp. But because of the information he received, it seems like there are no monsters suitable for pumping the priest. He didn't understand why Shin Lualu was letting him go there. Despite that, he began to move around. A blue ray appeared. There were many people around who were busy doing their own things and talking. Fong wondered why there were so many strangers here. He heard someone calling him. It was Lulu, and there were more people standing near her, waving to him and saying that they were waiting for him. Fong walked over. As everyone was in place, Lulu began to say that today's main task was to clear the herbarium of Chordata and the Scarlet Ring. She hugged his arm and asked him to help his rookies raised by their team to secretly provoke monsters to appear. One of the guys said hello to the rookie and shook his hand. He said that group attack skills would also damage the allies. The newcomer's level wasn't high, so it was better to stay away from the battlefield. The rookie replied that he understood him and would be careful. Fong walked behind the others. This was the first time they were participating in a teamwork to take down monsters. The guys prepared themselves for battle. In front of them were very tall creatures. They looked like worms. One of them opened its mouth. There were many teeth that were in a circle. One of the guys said it was a level 53 swamp scavenger worm. He said to quickly use a group attack. Everyone started to stand in one place. The creatures intertwined with each other. Yellow light was hitting them. Lawolo stood with her weapon. A notification came from the system. Creatures above your own level, 66,671 out of 99,999. Kill creatures above your own level, 66,672 of 999,9999. Fang Tian said that the end of his monster breeding mission was fast approaching. The warriors act as local shields and continue to pull monsters. The healing effect of the mage's long-range attack on the priest purifying monsters is hindering the enemies. Lalu replied that she too is technically a streamer, not just a rice fan. Fan told her that with this speed, he will soon be able to complete the monster clearing mission. He still has 2 more missions to complete. He needs to kill a regular boss above his own level, but he can't be too high. Level 20 or 30 will probably be enough. Fong asked if she had any good suggestions. Lalu thought for a moment. She remembered. The Tower of Ghosts quest was very suitable for Fan. Fan asked what kind of mission it was. Someone entered the room. Fang Tian was lying on the bed with a helmet on his head and didn't notice it. He was in the game. The girl held the phone to her ear and asked the person on the phone if the person was interested in Fang Tian. It was Tang Chang. She started to say that Fan was very good at dressing her dad, and she could tell him that Fang Tian was really talented in games. Tang Ran fell silent. Tang Chang asked why he suddenly became silent. He replied that it's nothing wrong to have a hobby, and if you make a name for yourself, you could be a professional player in the future. She addressed her by name and told her not to just play at home. She should still pay attention to her body, and he had something to do, so would hang up first. Tang Chang took the phone away from her ear and wondered why Dad was so weird. Tang Ran thought about the gaming talent. His assistant came over to him and said that according to their investigation, the explosion was tentatively caused by the Iraqi Moon Organization. They used some ways to imprison 3 high-ranking NPCs and let them use Nian on normal players normally. She showed him the information document and continued that 3 years ago, the abandoned valley had entered their surveillance area and there were no anomalies. In other words, MANHUA had tried to pull this off at least 3 years ago. The document showed people without information. The girl said that they had reached the MANHUA stage, but what was their goal? It just so happened that Fang Tian was also outside the Lost Valley at this time. Tang Ran surprisingly questioned her if Fong was also there. He tapped his fingers on the table on which these people's information was lying. He pondered on the fact that Fang Tian were there at the same time. Was it really just a coincidence? He said that whether Fang Tian had something to do with it or not, he would not let him follow his father's path. Strange creatures stood at the gate. One of them held an axe in his hand and shouted that the ruthless orcs had gathered once again. They were stealing people's belongings on the street. Every year the madness of orcs begins to invade the empire and plunder food. The king decided not to tolerate this. The lord of the ruined city obeyed the call and built a tower of ghosts outside the city gates. Various creatures' souls are sealed in the tower, and the higher the floor, the higher the level of the monster. On every 10th floor the player will encounter boss-level monsters guarding the tower. You can also get a warrior medal by defeating the boss. This time they call for warriors to give those dumb orcs a good look at who's boss. After the mission to bring back the monsters was completed, Shin Lalu asked Fan to come here to take the ghost tower mission. Fan stood in front of a strange creature who was angry and waving his arms around. It was a recruitment instructor who suddenly appeared to be an old man, which spoke wordlessly about the conflict between the Empire and the orcs. The instructor was pointing his hand towards the tower and talking loudly about how if Fong proved himself in the ghost tower, he could get a military rank, gold coins, and the king might even reward him. Fong held out his hand with a pouch of coins. He said he didn't have much time and asked how he could enter the tower. The old man took the pouch in his hand and said it was very simple. All you need is 20 silver coins and he would write Fan a letter of recommendation. Fan stood in front of the tower entrance and thought that if it wasn't for those 20 silver coins, everything would be sad. Jumped to another thought that Uncle Hubard was right. Most of the time money would help everyone avoid a lot of problems. The team quest is very effective. He completed the first quest in just a few hours. He received a message about a mission whose title was Trainee Assassin Training. Mission details: Objective 1, kill creatures above your player level, 99,999 out of 99,999. Objective 2, win a duel, 0 out of 100. Objective 3, kill bosses of your player level, 0 out of 10. There were people sitting on the ground selling their goods. The grandmother was shouting, luring customers in this way, that she sells poison potion, glow potion, ice potion, all at 50. No cheating, if the buyer buys it, at a loss to leave. Also the latest equipment, resistance to all attributes plus 10. Nearby sat a man and shouted that he had a small sale. Someone was selling weapons plus 20 to spell totem damage. Fang Tian approached the entrance of the tower and wanted to go on his way. He was stopped by the guard at the entrance. He said that Fong couldn't enter the ghost tower without a letter of recommendation. Fan immediately realized that this was the Tower of Ghosts. He said that he had a letter of recommendation and held out his hand with the letter. The guard read it carefully. A notification came with a hint that the player had passed the recruitment of the Lord of the Ruined City and received a recruit medal, level E. The guard said that Fan needs to pay 10 silver coins to enter. It is fashionable to do an infinite number of repetitions. They only take the highest score. Fan realized that if it was possible to repeat the challenge, it would help him a lot to complete the third task. He swung the doors open and found himself in a place where there was nothing, just blue light and emptiness. Red stars in the darkness. Fan readied his weapon. 3 small wild boars were coming at him. He marveled at them. The old man was right. The level of monsters increased with each new floor, but he didn't understand why there were wild boars on every floor. He had 2 daggers in his hands. He realized that the boss of the 10th floor, the Wild Boar King, was now on the 20th floor. The 2 Wild Boar Kings who had red eyes. The Wild Boar King only fiercely swept back and forth. Is this boss really that simple? Fong stood and in front of them were 2 huge wild boars that ran at him. He jumped up while they were running and embedded 2 daggers into both of them at once while they were close on different sides. The blow struck both boars with a crit. Fong looked at the blood that was left on his weapon. A notification came up that the system was telling him he could no longer continue. The boars fell down and didn't attack anymore. Fong was frustrated as he finally got into the swing of things and began the task. He figured it didn't matter. He could complete the task by coming here a few more times. It was getting late, so he decided to come next time. Objective 3. Kill bosses above player level, 2 out of 10. Blue bright sky. Fong was doing gymnastics in front of the school building. Luo ran up to him and warned him that there would be club team competitions in the afternoon, and asked if Fan had a good team. Fan replied that he didn't have a team. Luo turned back around and told someone that I was saying that Fan probably doesn't have a team yet. Tang Chang said then he joins them and then our team will be complete. There was another girl and a tall guy standing next to her. Fong said he had never played in a team match. Suddenly he would pull them down. Tang Chang walked over and started nudging him towards the rest of the team, telling him Fan to be more confident and also he could become a free mode master. A girl from their team said hello nicely. Her name is Mia and she is from chemistry class. She is also a mage just like Tang Chang, but she uses a more brutal fire method. The guy who was standing next to her added that the poplar fight is also of the brutal type. Tang Chang lifted the sleeve of her t-shirt and took a muscle, feeling the strength. She said then we need to discuss tactics. The 5 of them all stood in a circle and bent their heads closer to each other. Tang Chang started talking about how they are a temporary team and they don't have much time to get together. The current lineup was 2 mages, 2 fighters, and 1 assassin. And since there was no constant help from the priest, they weren't suited for long battles. The guy on their team insisted that it was faster to make a decision already. They are all brutal classes. They have to kill the enemy team before the priest can save anyone. Tang Chang asked Fan if there should be many skills that can break the opponent's rhythm. He replied yes. Right now he had 4 skills that he could use. They would probably be able to prevent the opponent from using skills for about 5 seconds. Tang Chang raised her thumb up. She said that Fan would stealthily control the priest, and they would attack the mage with the most power first, then deal with the rest. Fang Tian asked if their plan was too simple for a battle. The team guy and Luo put their hands on Fan's shoulders and said not to worry so much. Boss Tang's tactic makes sense. They all put their hands one-on-one and said loudly to themselves that they would do it. In the spacious room, there were 8 chairs facing one-on-one, 4 on each side. A man stood with a glass in his hand and opened the lid on it. He turned to the girl Chinyu. He asked if she was seriously recording everyone. She said that through single and team competitions, she wanted to explore the characteristics of each participant and find people who would compensate for the team's shortcomings. The man started to drink. The girl continued, saying that the team competition ended in failure for the team, the rookies, which turned out to be a pity. He replied to her that in terms of technology and team cooperation, the club team is more inexperienced. Failure was quite possible. VSCDD heroic force. The man in Chinyu started laughing with the words hero forgives. It was Fan Titan's assassin team last time. Mia from the team was nervous and asked the guys who came up with the name for their team. Tang Chang was putting on her helmet. Luo was also holding it in his hands but replied to Mia that tactics. It was tactics to parry the opponent. The game started. The 2 teams sat opposite each other on chairs. 3 fighters on the opposite side and the priest in charge of healing. Mia told the guys to follow their previous battle plan. The first seconds were the mage's performance. The pastor was on Fang Tian. All the players stood in front of their opponents. Fan said he understood his assignment and was already going into battle. The guys from their team ran as well. One of the opponents turned to Lo and said why Lo? He was a hero of mercy. Lo jumped at him, but the man put up his shield, and Lo's whole body slammed into him. The girl screamed the words of the spell, namely holy prayer. Fong managed to hit her on the head. She fell down. Fan didn't realize why he had defeated the pastor so easily. Now the opposing team would be weaker. Although, even if something happened, he made some plans just in case. He wondered if the entire task Tang Chang had given Fong was only to control this pastor so that she couldn't support the team. The girl channeled the fire tongue spell. Fire was directed at the opponent. She tried to defend herself against it. Lalu used a fireball. Fireballs flew towards the opponents. The girl realized that their target was her. Lalu and the guy from the opposing team were standing opposite. He was preparing to attack. His attention was diverted by a guy from Lalu's team hitting a sledgehammer nearby. Lalu and Mia combined their spell tools. They created a huge orange-colored ball above them, which consisted of heat strike and serial fire. The girl they wanted to defeat used the cold in her defense. Fireballs flew towards her. She was protected. There was an explosion from the impact. She realized that she had released the ice shield earlier than she had planned, saying that luckily she had plenty of energy, but threatened the guys that they would pay for it soon. This ice rock can resist 10,000 points and lasts for 3 seconds, while the priest's health recovery process is going on, and the opponent's cooldown time hasn't expired, so there's hope. She looked at the priest and was scared for him and started to ask what happened to him. The girl stood up and holding her head, walked over to Fan and shouted and asked if they were following her. Fan said that Xing asked him to control her. He said as long as they controlled her, they could win. The girl started to scream. She asked Fan if it wasn't easier to just kill her. He replied that all the focus is on the task at hand. His job is to control her, not to kill her. Fan hit her on the head again and called her stupid. She fell face down. There was a huge fire blast. The girl fell to her knees, saying she wasn't careful and started disappearing from the game. A large amount of fire between teams. A guy from the team took two at once by the neck and squeezed. Fan stood next to the priest girl and watched her. She sat silently. She looked at Fan with a displeased face while she started to disappear from the game. The guys exited the game and were happy that they had won. The girl who was recording the information said that CDD didn't miss the chance to destroy the opponent's tactics, but she didn't expect it. This Fang Tian turned out to be an overbearing assassin. From the beginning to the very end, he kept the priest on a short leash. The man replied that this command was quite interesting. In addition, Fang Tian had undergone special training before. She asked what this special training was. The guys walked out of the classroom happy to have one. Shin asked the guy sitting next to her what the training was. He didn't pay attention to her question. He was watching Fan. Asked if she thought he was walking too fast somehow. From start to finish, the pastor was controlled within a certain radius. He handed the girl the records of the women's and said that these people seemed to be good and suggested to pay attention to them. They were the names of Fang Tian, Jiamban, and Tang Qin. The guys said goodbye to each other. Tang Chang and Fong walked together. The girl was laughing proudly. Fong wondered if she was really so happy about winning this game. She replied that of course she was happy. It was the night battle mode, team battles, 2 consecutive victories. He was walking and thinking that those who are not the main force of the school team and don't have a unified tactical system are a pretty mediocre force. The girl looked at him and said he was weird. They just beat the school team. Isn't he happy? She took his cheeks and started pulling him to smile. She said she had been trying not to express emotion all day, not laughing much, doesn't know why the girl scared him only now. She walked forward, Fong touching her wrinkled cheeks. Master said that if the assassin exposes his heart, it means that danger is near, and he should idly pass. But why is Tang Chang suddenly leaving his hands right now? But he didn't do it the first time. The girl turned to him and told him to go home. He said goodbye to her. The house where Tang Chang and Fong lived. She swung the doors open and shouted that she was back in the room to start. Fong pondered that it just so happened that he continued cleaning the ghost tower to fulfill his mentor's assignment. Fantasadied in the game near the entrance, with a guard standing nearby. He looked at the messages that had come while he was gone from Lalu. They said for him to go to the temple, that she was worried and why he wasn't answering. Fong wondered why the rush. He texted her in chat asking her what was wrong. She aggressively started asking why he was online so late. After all, he had recently promised to create gargoyles for her. Fan only remembered about that. Lalu started to get even more angry and told him to hurry up to the creator's temple and have all the materials prepared for him. The gargoyle is obviously bland, not to mention attractive, and that doesn't give much choice. He didn't understand why the Star Guild was so obsessed with the gargoyle. Clicked on a message with a single word OK to reply to lol. Fong held the scroll in his hand. Thought about the fact that Lalu had helped him in many ways and that was fine. Now he would help her. They met on the steps in the building. Lalu said he came later than usual. She thought something had happened to him. Fong asked why their guild wanted a gargoyle so badly. The girl replied that their guild was preparing to break through the 60th floor of the dungeon, and if he succeeded, then he would become famous in one fall. A good opportunity to increase his strength by another level. Fong asked how that could be. Lulu pointed to a lot of interconnected sheets. Stacks of them. There are 100 materials here. She said to take care of them and don't stress. Fan said he would go to the ghost tower to fulfill the assassin mentor's assignment, so it's better to start now. He sat on the floor and did nothing. Lalu asked what was wrong. He turned to her and asked why she shouldn't go out. One lack of focus would affect the outcome. The girl with a displeased face walked out and said she would wait outside the door. In the last purge and adding control formation, he secretly used a small idea to increase the chance of success of creating his puppet. Now he was alone and could use 1008 minds to see the result. He closed his eyes. On his body, light streaks appeared in certain places. A large star with symbols was drawn on the floor. In the middle of the star was all the information Lalu had provided. Starting the ritual. Fan sat with his eyes closed. A breeze appeared, with everything around him in white light. The other things didn't stand still. He opened his eyes abruptly. Without a doubt, using 1008 minds, the creature was running dozens of times smoother than recently. Lalu walked through the village and thought. She put the tickets in front of the president. Fang Tian is very talented. He has a rating of at least 308. Hence, she provided 100 materials during the meeting. She hoped that she could form an army of gargoyles at this time. Fong opened the door. Luolu asked him how it went. Fong replied that 20 pieces came out. Luolu didn't expect that. A gargoyle with 20 copies created from materials for 100 copies. A success rate of only 20% was too high. Fan told Luolu that there were more than 70 materials left, so he suggested she continue tomorrow. Otherwise the success rate would drop. Lalu looked at him. She started yelling at him for using less than 30 materials to create 20 gargoyles. He replied that if so many things were produced, the success rate wouldn't get better. That was the limit for today. Lalu started counting on her fingers for information, said that with a 70 to 80% chance of success, but he seemed to be saying 40 to 50% chance of success. Fan opened the message. He said he wasn't a master of the technique before, and they were watching from the sidelines, which distracted him. It's 10:30 and he has to go to the ghost tower. He said they would talk about the rest tomorrow. Lalu put a hand on his shoulder. She said it was the first time she'd seen him harvesting deadly mental weeds. He's pretty honest. She asked if that was the picking technique. Fong looked at her questioningly and said it seemed to be common. Lalu was delighted. She asked if he would come to them about collecting medical supplies for them when their regiment grew. Fan replied that Pancake said that from the Gothic level the dungeon would open. No one successfully cleared the floor. Going there is a waste of time. The girl said that there are a lot of high-level medical materials in the level 60 dungeon. He would help her gather those materials. Asked how about splitting into 3 to 7 pieces. Fan remembered that Uncle Hubbrad was right. It was impossible to move around in this world without money. Previous assignments and job changes had cost Fan all the money, and he would use it in large quantities going forward. Fan agreed to Lalu's suggestion. She happily said that after he completed the assassin task, she would give him a high-level sample to remove the level limit. Fong only replied that he was noisy. School. Someone knew Fan by name. Fan put his head on his desk and slept. From behind him, a classmate shouted his name. Fan heard someone yelling. It was the teacher scolding him for falling asleep in his Chinese class. He was pointing his hand towards the door and telling him to get out. Fong didn't immediately realize what they wanted him to do, but still calmly complied. He headed for the exit. The disgruntled teacher remained silent and waited for him to come out. Outside the classroom, Fong wondered why he suddenly let him leave. He didn't need to go to class now. Yesterday he had cleared the gargoyles and stormed the ghost tower. He was seriously overworked and was just starting to rest. Fong sewed past the other classes. From one, he heard that a guy named Suong had been kicked out of class and that he shouldn't come back unless he was going to do the teacher's homework in the future. A disgruntled guy came out of the classroom. They met Fan's eyes. He started a conversation and asked Fan what shift he was from since he hadn't seen him here before. Fan replied that he was from the 3rd shift. Su said that the 3rd grade Chinese teacher is in charge of grading. Fan is very brave. He offered to talk about it and asked why Fong had a fight with him. He replied that he fell asleep in class. Su put his hand on Fan's shoulder and said he had the same tastes and told him to give him a place to play. They walked down the hallway with their arms around each other, getting to know each other. They were in front of the entrance to the Cyber Sports Club. Fan asked why he brought him here. Thoth replied to Fan to keep his voice down and not let those inside hear them. He heard that GN High School had arrived, that he would test them today. They looked inside through the glass doors. There stood 2 teams facing each other. Su slammed his fist on the door irritably. He said they were late. They didn't think they would lose. Fan asked if this GN school is that cool. Su said that this school is their old rival. At this time, they were supposed to take advantage of several masters in their school, but none of them came to the club to test them. It's a disgrace. One of the guys in the cyber sports club said about hearing that in the past few years, 2 graduates who are exceptionally universally recognized by the Special Federal Department were not from their high school. He didn't expect the varsity team to be that weak. One guy replied to him that his mouth stinks and whether he has ever won. The girl standing next to him, Shin Yu, said not to blame them. She made a mistake in managing the school team, ignoring the newcomers' training. The result is that after the game, the players are short-circuited. A guy said he thinks Shihai Main City is good, and it propels them to the quarter-finals every year, and nothing but that. Another responded to him that it's all rumors, asked if he had ever heard that suggestion. The 3 guys were walking in laughing. Fong and Su looked at them. Su said he was pissed off. Fong looked in his direction and thought about what a master had once told him, that people who are anger-driven are more easily controlled than others. Su irritably gathered his hand into a fist and told Fan about how Jian High School had started meddling with their school and he couldn't help in any way. Said if Fan helped him now, he would become his brother in the future and he would help him. Fong looked at him. Su moved closer to him and whispered something in his ear. Fan looked carefully and realized what Su had told him. The guys were standing outside a tall building. One of them had told their team boss Chu that the Four Seas High School was very weak. He had heard that they were following them closely earlier and asked if that was true. Chu replied that their goal was not only to become number 1 in the province. Their opponents were just upstarts who had been pointed out their place. Chu held his hands on his stomach and told the guys that they could find a place to sit for now and he would go get some water. Su called him a brat and said threateningly that he would feel better soon. Chu walked into the bathroom and held his stomach. Suddenly, someone put a bucket on his head. It was Fang Tian. Su pushed him in the back with his foot. He hit his head with the bucket against the wall. He fell to the floor. He started screaming who it was and who dared to hit him. Su continued to kick him in the head with the bucket. Fang yelled at him to stop. Su called him scum and trash and he and Fan headed for the exit. Chu took the bucket off his head and angrily said he recognized Su Yang's voice. He asked what the hell he wanted from him. Sooner or later he would pay him back for this. Fong and Su were sitting at the table eating lunch. Su was laughing at the situation that happened. He was telling Fan that he hadn't seen how pathetic Chu was yet. Said just let him pretend he's 13 and you'll be in jail for months. That's a light beating. Su tells Fan he's a good bro and thanks him for helping him out today. Now he can ask him for anything he wants. Fan replied that it was normal for the club to lose, why he was so angry about it, and asked if he was part of the cyber sports club. Su looked at him with bewilderment. He replied that he used to be, but the coach underestimated him and he left the club in anger. Now that the coach has changed, he has been invited back but he feels rather pointless. Fan ate and asked why it was pointless. He said his coach had changed. Su looked at him. He said he would come back. He liked cyber sports but he heard the selection got pretty strict. Fan was eating corn and asked if he was really that good at the sport. Su replied that yes, since he played 5 games against Jiang High School last year. They sat across the table from each other and clinked drink bottles. Su told him that he didn't know how good he was at it. Tang Chang asked Fan to come back. If the Chinese teacher found out he wasn't in school, he would get angry. Fan asked in surprise, didn't he let him go? Tang Chang said that because Fan had actually left, the Chinese teacher would surely complain when she went back. She wouldn't be able to help him. Fan sat down on the bed and was already putting on his helmet. He had one last assassin's quest left, no matter what the task was. Everything must be completed as quickly as possible in these 2 days. The quest. The name of the task is Assassin's Practice. Quest details: Objective 1, kill creatures leveled higher than the player, 99,999 out of 99,999. Objective 2, win the arena, 0 out of 100. Objective 3, kill bosses above the recommended level, 10 out of 10. Objective 4, kill elite level 10 or above player level bosses, 1 out of 1, quest completed. Fan was in the game. He had a choice of game modes in front of him. He chose the competitive mode. A system hint notification came up. Player-related accepted quests detected. Assassin Practice, 97. Warning, this quest is for competitive mode only, and duels in other modes will not count. Questions about the player's rank appeared, to which he answered yes. Whether to continue, ranked mode 332. Whether to hide his name and face. Players can pick up his items. The search for opponents to play with began. Fan began to move around. Team matches and individual battles are not available in competitive mode. The system will automatically pick opponents close to the player by rank and level. Other modes will not interfere with the scoring. In the forest stood a guy with a sword. He didn't understand why no one was there. Suddenly, someone from behind put a knife to his throat. It was Fang Tian. He slit his throat and he started to disappear from the game. Needless to say, because of the low rank, all of Fan's enemies would be rookies. A notification appeared in front of him that the player Fang Tian had won the first battle. Quest progress, 1 out of 100. Choosing whether the player wanted to join the next battle. Fong confidently accepted the quest. First, Fong defeated the girl, then slit the guy's throat, and killed the guy again. He stood and looked at the notification that player Fang Tian had gotten a rank, 45 out of 100. The guy was sitting at the table and preparing to put on his helmet. He was saying that every month, the top 10,000 players got rewards. His rank was now above 13,000 with only half a month left. He boldly started the game. 130 picks. He wondered why picking was taking so long today. The opponent is matched. He stood in the game and thought about the fact that each character only had one account, so it was pointless to lock his data. He became wary. After such a lone selection, the system should have picked him a worthy opponent, but no one showed up. He looked at the trees and bushes and realized that his opponent was hiding in the thicket, so he was either an assassin or an archer. The wind blew. He realized his opponent was coming. He swung his weapon and asked if he was hiding. He changed his face at what he saw. The gargoyles appeared in front of him. He fell to the ground. He didn't realize what was happening. He had never heard of summoning telepathic summoning gargoyles. Shouted loudly what class his opponent was. The guy was standing surrounded by gargoyles. Basically, to kill a summoned creature, you have to attack its creator. But he doesn't know where it is, and then how to defeat it. And they're flying gargoyles. He doesn't have the skills to kill them. The guy was angry about it. He was yelling at the gargoyles to come over, to get it over with. The guy's mouth was bleeding. It was Fong who stabbed him in the back. Fortunately, Fang Tian could control the gargoyle and help it in battle. But after this line of victories, he would be matched up with stronger mages and fighters as opponents. He received a congratulatory notification that he had successfully completed the quest, Assassin Practice, and gained a large amount of experience. But until the player passes the dungeon level, this experience will not be available. The level limit is 60. He should pass the dungeon as soon as possible. Fan decided that he could go to the high-level dungeon with Shin Lolo tomorrow and raise the level limit. Fan was sitting at a desk at school. Luo, who was sitting in front, turned to him and held out a tablet for him to look at the post above. Fan took the tablet in his hands and saw that the picture was of him in game form. The post was signed that an unknown assassin showed up in the arena yesterday, so everyone should be careful. Fan said it said that an assassin appeared summoning air units. That's amazing. Luo laughed and said, luckily he is anonymous, otherwise he would have been killed. Fong wondered if it was written about him. A girl walked up to them and put her hand on the desk in front of them. It was Tang Chang. She told Fan that the principal said he would be happy if he spent more time on the club, and joined the compound classes. Fan held a piece of paper in his hand with the information written on it. He said he didn't have time for it. Tang Chang decided to remind her of what had recently happened to the Chinese teacher. Fong didn't listen to her. He tore the sheet into pieces and threw it in the trash. He started to put the books into his backpack. He said it was okay. He had other important tasks to do, but he would go back home first. Luo said Fong is cool and this is the best boss he's ever had. Tang Chang looked after Fong and was stunned by his answer. Fang Tian was in the game. He was sitting on the ground cutting mushrooms as he got a message saying that the group would be opened at 7:30 p.m. and needed to approach the Eye of the Storm. He received a system prompt saying that he had gotten the Eye of the Storm teleport scroll from Shin Lolo's player. There was a storm amongst the forest. There was a tall mountain made of rocks with something blue inside. Fan arrived at the place. Lolo was waiting for him there. He asked if she wanted to start, to which she said yes. She asked to let her familiarize him with their backdrop first. In the middle of the lake was a rock on which a girl was sitting with a musical instrument in her hands. This is a village called the Twilight Village of Wadi Takram. The elves in the village have been protected for generations thanks to the Fountain of Eternity that sits on the highest cliff of the mountain. If someone can pass the test and drink the water from this fountain, they will be rejuvenated. Fong asked again if that meant they would pass the elf test and take the Fountain of Eternity. Lolo said yes. A tall guy with an axe behind his back walked up to them and asked Lolo if this was the new member of their team. Lolo said yes and introduced him. If everyone is here now, they can get started. The guy turns around to the others and yells to them that everyone is in place. He gives them 5 minutes to get ready. This operation will take at least 5 hours. Fong asked Lalu again if this jam will really take 5 hours. She said yes, as it takes a long time to go through, and offered to listen to the captain. A notification from the system came up with a reminder. Entering the level 50 dungeon Fountain of Eternity. Reminder, copy limit, 20 pieces. Hint, after entering the dungeon, do not stop anywhere, and do not exit the game. Then the judges will count it as a death. The boys entered the portal. They were walking through a village. The village is shown from an elevation where there were houses, a forest, and a lake nearby. Tip from the system, start the quest. Fountain has no description. Fill a special flask with water from the fountain. Players will receive an item, a flask with endless water from the fountain, no shower attachment, no service items. Fong was walking and noticed a tree. It was a great tree, guarded by elves, but it seemed strange to him for some reason. The captain turned to Fang Tian and told him that he was only level 20 and his equipment was of low quality. He offered to stay for him and wait for them at this place. After they completed the mission, he could go through it again with Lalu, and he would then level up. Fong mentally asked if they needed him. Elves never liked humans, maybe they have a special way to get a quest. Lalu told Fan that they would visit the dungeon twice a month. 70% of the dungeon is already protected. It can only be done by communicating with the Twilight Dwellers to get the quest to continue. Lalu waved her hand to Fan and said that they would be back soon. Fang Tian walked over to a large tree that had leaves falling off. He put his hand on it. This tree seems luxurious, but he could feel death and despair inside. Suddenly he heard lines from a poem in Latin, the translation of which was, "First depresses and then calms." He turned around and decided that this could be a type of clue. Fang Tian was standing in a clearing in the forest. He lifted his head up. There was someone sitting cross-legged on a rock. It was an elf. He was playing an accordion. Fong stepped on a branch that was on the ground and it crunched. The stranger heard it and stopped playing. He said that he had been wandering at the entrance of the village for so long, then why not go into the village and take a look at it? Fong replied that elves don't like strangers entering their territory, so that wouldn't work. The elf told him that he seemed different from those who had just entered the village. Fan replied that he was not like them. He too was here to find the source of immortality. He held out his hand to Fan and said that he was very honest and asked him to show him his hand. Fong leaned over to him and gave him his hand. The elf looked at it carefully and said that the breath of the tree of life remained in Fan's hand. He must have noticed that after being under the tree for so long, the 2 trees of life at the entrance to the Twilight Village must be withered. Now the entire village was shrouded in the shadow of death. Fong asked him that according to legend, the elf's tree of life was not to her liking. He was right. The tree of life gave birth to the entire elven race, and the place where the tree of life exists is home to the elven race. Without the influence of other forces, the tree of life would not wither naturally. The elf said that a year ago, he sensed an evil force appearing over the territory of the orc spirit moon wolf race, and it was such a force that was destroying their tree of life. So he hopes that Fan will help Ti sort it out and see what they can find. Fong said that he was only level 20. The elf replied that he is the patron of destiny, if Fan is willing to help them. After passing this test he can promise to gift him some interesting little things that improve his power. Fong, after hearing that this was the way to improve strength, agreed. System hint, favor, fairy game score, task reward, unknown. At this time, the team was fighting the stone creature. The captain shouted that it was about to go full throttle. One of the participants received a message from the system that his teammate Fang Tian was launching a mission, Druid Trial. His teammate Fang Tian receives a map of the surroundings of the Lost Forest, a letter about the wolf tribe. This notification came to the rest of the guys as well. Lalu looked at this notification and only put her hand on her face and asked herself what strange task this Fong had solved. One guy asked them if any of them had heard of the Druid Challenge task. A member from the team replied that this task never appeared in the manual. It must be a hidden task. The captain thought about the fact that the little rookie didn't talk much, and he didn't expect to be so lucky. The covert mission worked the first time. Lalu asked the captain if they would accomplish the mission. He replied that the communication function is not available in the dungeon. They don't know where Fang Tian is and how Fong called the mission. He suggested that why don't they take the Yolu Wolf clan after completing this side mission. Lalu was angry at Fan. After all, he should be standing still and waiting for the others to return. Fang Tian pushed himself off the ground and jumped back. As he flew, he pondered that the moon wolf was a branch of the werewolf tribe, and it also belonged to the orc tribe. Maybe the orcs are targeting the elven tribe's ancient tree of life, but what is their goal? He landed on a branch of the tree. looked at the map he had in his pocket. He saw that there was a wolf standing below, guarding the place. It was a spirit wolf guardian, level unknown. Of course, it's impossible to tell the level of the enemy if it's above level 10. Shin Lalu mentioned that most of the monsters in this dungeon are around level 45 to 55. Fan's level is too low and it's too difficult to get into the camp through the fight. He decided that he should sneak up and test the sentry's strength. He received a notification from the system, tip, player Fang Tian has realized skill, soul. Skill a soul breath, level 12. Skill description, he can greatly reduce his own breath after using breath. Harder to see through the use of stealth skills and cannot be detected by some special skills. The probability of success is determined by the skill levels of both sides. Any offensive action will interrupt the effect of the breath. Energy consumption, none. Fong thought that this was the first time a system notification was received when using stealth skills. He wondered if it could be that after the stealth skill reached a certain level, the awareness of the breath-holding skill would be triggered. He decided that it would be better like this, to catch his breath and sneak around so that he could infiltrate the young wolf clan's camp with more confidence. Fang Tian stood at the ready with his dagger in hand from behind the wolf. In addition to checking the strength of the transparent wolf guards, he must check the range of their defense. Fong took 2 steps forward. The wolf sensed that something was wrong. He turned back around. The wolf stood and looked around. Fang Tian was standing behind a tree. At a distance of almost 4 to 5 meters, the wolf sentry should have sensed something. It would be very difficult for Fan to launch an effective attack. Fong held his dagger in front of his face. There were still more than 4 hours left and he couldn't waste time. Once the time runs out, the quest is failed. Fong thought to himself that the wolf was now alone and would need to slay it. Fang Tian rushed to attack from behind. The wolf realized this. It turned around and aimed 3 small iron arrows at Fan. One hit Fan's arm. He didn't realize he had a crossbow. Fan swung his dagger at him, only by continuing to approach him at this moment, so that he wouldn't have a chance to use his crossbow. Would Fan have a chance to win? He hit the wolf in the shoulder with his dagger. The wolf started to pull out his knife. He swung it at Fan with it. The level difference was too great, and now Fan could only dodge his attacks before he could find a chance to counterattack. In front of Fan were blue streaks from the wolf's weapon. The wolf ran towards him and held a knife in his hand. He swung at Fan, but he managed to dodge. Fan stuck his dagger into its neck from behind. The wolf fell dead. His body began to disappear from the game. Fan sighed and said that luckily, the wolf sentry wasn't a mage. If Fan hadn't made it in time, he would have most likely become a corpse. Fan crouched down and touched the dead wolf with his hand. System reminder, received item, 5 PCS bottle of blood. After taking it can quickly restore part of the level's HP. Reuse time, 2 hours. System prompt, received item, Frost Wolf Clan Secret Medicine. Instructions after taking it. It can gradually restore 500 points of health within 60 seconds. It can be used simultaneously with other multi-type medicines. Level limit, 4, recharge time, 5 hours. Description, a secret medicine of the Frost Wolf Clan. It stinks at a distance, and although it is effective, the player may not want to drink it. Fan held a vial of green liquid in his hand. He said that he might have to have this. He drank it all in a volley. His health began to increase. This blood vial healing effect has a 2-hour recharge period, so if Fan was injured again, he couldn't use it. Fang Tian was standing in front of the fence with a wolf watching from a wooden balcony. One sentry is so difficult to deal with. In the future, it was better to avoid fighting as much as possible. While the wolf was looking the other way, Fong quickly ran underneath the bottom. There was another wolf standing below. Fan hid behind the pieces that were in front of the wolf. Fan wanted to attack it and already presented his dagger to it. The wolves noticed something. Fan was within their perception range. He was sitting behind the bushes. 2 wolves stood at the entrance and regarded the sides. Fan couldn't enter, and he found only one gate. The door was guarded by wolf warriors, which must have been harder to deal with than the wolf guards. There was no way Fong could lure both the wolf warriors and the guards, and if he was discovered, he would definitely be chased by a large group. Fong pondered what he should do. Time was running out. He wondered why not return to the Twilight Elf village and find useful items, or better yet, give up. The ground beneath his feet began to shake. The wolves looked off into the distance. Suddenly they fell to their knees, dropped their weapons, and began to worship. Although Fong doesn't know what's going on, now was the best chance to infiltrate the wolf clan's camp. The system prompts the player to level up pursuit current level 9. Description, leveling up can reduce some of the penalty effects that limit movement speed. While the wolves were bowing, Fan quickly ran into the open gate. Fan received a reminder from the system. Advice to the player: Fang Tian, take your time and you'll find the answer. Quest name: The Test of the Garden. Quest description: you must destroy the source of darkness of this forest, otherwise everyone will die. Reward: items that will help in survival. Quest progress: 13%. Fong read and thought that the mission statement was very vague, and there was no hint of where to find the source of darkness. Fan peeked around the corner. The camp is so large that it is very dangerous to wander around without a purpose. He looked at what was inside the camp and didn't understand what was going on. This is the team that Fang Tian was a part of. Notification from the system: your team has successfully sealed the spirit and completed the quest Spirit of Mountain 9. Complete the quest Spirit Power of Mountain 9. Find the quest creator to get your reward. There was a pictogram drawn on the floor, in the middle of which was the spirit of a creature that was trying to get out, but everything was hopeless. The guy turned to the captain and asked if with the sealed mountain this mission was almost complete. The captain replied that it was correct. Passing their quest wasn't much of a problem, but their rookie seemed to have triggered a hidden quest. He suggested that the team return to the Twilight Village and turn in the quest, then go in search of the Wolf Clan. The team guy happily agreed and said he had never heard of this hidden quest before. This was probably the first time he had appeared. It would be of great use to them. Lalu said they knew nothing about this mission and it could be very dangerous. The captain stood up taller. He raised his axe up and began confidently suggesting that the team go back to camp and meet the newcomer. Then they could ask the NPCs about the Wolf Clan before discussing it. The guys on the team supported his speech and agreed with him. Fang Tian saw that there were tents inside the camp and many wolves kneeling and worshipping nearby. Fong watched them from behind one of the tents. He was not happy as he had gotten caught up with these wolves before leaving the camp. A black circle where the tent was visible. It was an evil aura. Fong realized that if he continued to stand there he would most likely be discovered. He decided to hide in one of the tents. He went inside. Fortunately, it was just a place where they stocked up on various materials. Fan looked outside. One wolf was standing in front of the others asking what was wrong with them. Fong assumed that the shaman was reprimanding his warriors, but didn't understand why he was doing so. Maybe the earthquake that happened just now was related to the dark forces mentioned in the mission. Fong opened two drawers. System hint: item, charcoal. Description: odorless. When burned creates a bit of smoke. System hint: item, ordinary swords. Description: ordinary weapons of the Wolf Clan. While the mission description is not very clear, it is likely that the evil forces mentioned are some special item or character. Whether it's a person or an item that can affect the Tree of Life, it will be closely guarded. The tent that the shaman came out of was well guarded and might contain some clues. Fong decided he had to find a way to distract them from himself, otherwise it would be hard to get out of here if he alerted the whole pack. He wondered how he could distract them. Fan pulled down the brown cloth that was covering something. System hint: item, a barrel of peas. Description: lightly lay it down and hold it. Keep away from open flames. Detonation will cause a violent explosion and will do a lot of damage to nearby creatures and objects, so use with caution. Additional note: if you have some special skills, you can also use it as a raw material. There is a high chance of explosion if you fail. Additional note: this item can be moved, not stored in a backpack, and cannot be taken out of the game. Fan realized he blew them up. He'll be able to get their attention. Unfortunately, there is no lighter here, and he can't use his mind to start a fire in this game. He realized that he could light it with the sparks created by the alchemy he had recently learned. Fan crouched down on the floor and began to do the intended thing. The captain asked the crew if there was any mission related to the Moonwolves. The girl replied that there wasn't. They all asked NPCs who were willing to talk and no one gave any clues about the Wolf Clan. The boy turned to the captain yelling that the old druid who played the piano on the mountain behind the village but never spoke had disappeared. Lalu said to see if anyone had run a quest by the old druid. She asked the guys if anyone had seen Fang Tian. Suddenly there was an explosion and everything shook. Lalu said that it was at the side of the wolf village. The captain asked if it was the newcomer who made so much noise. Lalu realized that Fang Tian had indeed gone on a mission alone. She told the team that Fang Tian was very important to the guild. They couldn't let him die. The captain said that this rookie went to the wolf village. They can't let a level 20 kid look down on them. He called them to go there and support him. There was black smoke coming from the wolf village. There were tents standing. Among them were two wolves who were putting out the fire. Fong was standing inside the tent. Although the guards outside had been lured out, there might be more of them inside, so it was necessary to get rid of them quickly. Fan walked further inside the tent. There was a table in the middle of the room, and a huge statue of a wolf head hanging on the wall. Fong was surprised and wondered if there were actually no guards here. He opened one of the chests. In them were jewels. Fong couldn't believe that they could be lying in such a closely guarded tent. It couldn't be. He looked outside. The guards would be back as soon as the fire from the explosion was put out. He thought about the fact that there must be something wrong here. The master had said that anything incongruous could be hiding some sort of mechanism. Fong walked up to the wolf head statue. He thought the eyes were different from the wolf head's eyes. He poked 2 fingers into the eyes of the statue. System hint: congratulations on being the first to crack this type of hidden mechanism. Developed skill understanding mechanisms, 1 level. Description: passive skill. Can better detect the presence of mechanisms. 1% chance to break the mechanism. 1% chance not to alarm the mechanism. A passage appeared in the floor. Fong walked over and looked down. He hadn't expected there to be a secret passage. He wondered if this passage would be related to the mission. Fong climbed down. The entrance to the inside was covered by tiles from the floor. System hint: mission update. Mission: Druid's errand. However, the player discovered a secret passage leading downstairs in the tent of the Moon Wolf clan. You need to go to the secret passage and continue searching for information about the Tree of Life and the Evil Aura. The current quest completion rate was 28%. Fong was walking down the steps in the dark room. He saw the shadow of a wolf on the wall. Immediately pulling out his dagger, he assumed it might be a guardian of the Moon Wolves. He saw the wolf. It was the guardian of the Moon Wolf clan's dungeon. The level is unknown. The difference in level is great that the level isn't even shown. It seems it's best to avoid fighting him. Suddenly, the wolf noticed Fan. Fan realized that this was not good. The wolf slammed 2 fists against the ground, but he wanted to hit Fan. Fortunately, Fong managed to dodge. Fang Tian took out a dagger and said that in that case, it was better to get rid of him. He stuck the dagger into his neck from behind. Fong realized that his strength was still small. If it was a monster of the same level as him, it would take off at least half of its life. It didn't matter to Fan. He must deal as much damage as possible. He started trying to hit the wolf with his dagger. The wolf screamed loudly. Fan began to move away from it little by little. The one began to turn into an even stronger creature. His eyes turned red and horns appeared on his forehead. The wolf took a swing at Fan. He was thrown aside from the blow and hit the wall. He let go of the dagger from his hands. Wolf sighed with anger. He started to run at Fan. He almost hit him with his fist, but he ducked. Fan looked at him and spoke words of weakness. The wolf looked at him. A dagger passed through the place of his throat. Blood rushed out from his throat. Fang Tian swung again, but the place of the wolf was left with dust. Its horns fell to the floor with a clatter. Fong didn't realize what was happening and how he had become faster. The wolf no longer stood like a human, but became wolf-shaped, on 4 paws. They attacked each other. Fong realized that he was at least twice as strong as him, and the only way to win was to attack him. The wolf was confident. While Fan was trying his best, Fong grasped his injured shoulder with his hand. The wolf's speed and strength only increased. He realized that when his physical strength ran out, he would die. Fan took hold of the dagger with his hand, along which blood dripped. The wolf waited for Fong's next decisions. Fang Tian started to run into the battle. He decided that he couldn't keep fighting like this. He must give him one last blow. It was a life-and-death blow. Fan stretched his hand with his dagger straight out and shouted to the wolf to come towards him. The wolf released its claws. Fan's entire arm that was pointed straight out was scratched and sleeveless. Fan put forth his maximum effort. A punch occurred. Fang Tian was almost without strength. His dagger was pointed at the wolf's chest. Fortunately, it wasn't a boss-level monster and had an average amount of life. Otherwise it would have been impossible to defeat it. Fang Tian leaned against the stone wall. Forcibly extract the consciousness and attach it to his arm to increase his speed. The price was the entire arm. There was blood dripping from his arm. Now he didn't have the strength to lift his arm. He sat down near the wall with no strength. The wolves were running somewhere. A team was fighting them. The captain shouted that there were more and more wolves. Fire was being launched. Lalu said they had too much responsibility. They couldn't fight. The captain yelled for everyone to cheer up. He said to go into economy of force mode and watch their movements. Take turns joining the battle to solve the energy problem. Lalu mentally asked Fan what happened at the werewolf camp. A dark place with stone walls. Fang Tian was standing by the wall with an injured arm. He kept thinking about the fact that there had been no one for a long time. There seemed to be only one elite guard in this secret passage. He desperately told himself that his right arm had failed. Fan stood up confidently and wondered if he could get any clues. System tips. Item: Wolf equipment. The special bracelet can only be worn by the bravest warrior of the Snow Wolf clan. Item equipment level, LVL, 50. Effect, dexterity plus 10, plus 10. System reminder. Subject, Scroll of Wild Fury. Description, Berserk class. If the training conditions are met, after using the scroll automatically learn non-wild violence skills. Strength, 300. Stamina, 2106. Dexterity, skill description 50. Instantly consume 80% of the current blood volume. Increase base dexterity by 40%, 100 strength, and at the same time the damage the player receives is increased by 50%. Additional clarification, forcibly learning this skill through classes not intended requires 3 times the base attribute requirements. Fang Tian became frustrated. Level 50 equipment and skill scrolls were of no use to him, so he could trade for some attribute to restore his health. System reminder, item, secret key. Description, opens the dungeon door. Fan carefully walked forward. It seems that the secret dungeon of the Moonwolves is ahead. He hoped that he would find some information there. Fong walked down the steps to the bottom. In front of him was a grated door with a lock hanging on it. Someone on the other side of the door asked who was there. Fong looked and realized that the wolf clan had managed to imprison an elf. There was an elf girl lying on the cold floor. She saw the man and asked how he got here. Fane put a key in the lock, told her he was here to investigate evil forces. A druid from the girl's clan had given him the task. The girl said there was no such druid in their Twilight Village. She asked if it was about the one who sits on the hillside outside the Twilight Village and who plays a musical instrument. Said that perhaps she had been locked in here for too long and a new master had come to the village. Fong opened the door for her. He sat down on the floor tiredly. The girl walked over and saw that he was hurt. Fong thought that he had all 58 liters of blood left. His body was too exhausted, and his right arm wouldn't move. He decided that he probably wouldn't be able to finish this task. The girl looked around. She sat on the floor near the wall, next to a small leaf that was growing from the ground. Something was dripping from it. Fong looked at it wondering how there could be a sprout in that hole. The girl filled her hands with water, carried her hands to Fan and told him to drink it. It would help him slowly recover his condition. Fan drank from her hands. Fan said that the blood volume had recovered. Now he can fight with one hand. The girl apologized and said it was all she could do for him. Said Fan's injury is very serious. If he doesn't get it treated soon, he may never be able to use his right arm again. The girl looked at Fan. She was very humble. Fan thanked her for her concern, but he must complete the task of researching the withered tree of life. He asked if she knew anything about it. The girl clenched her hand into a fist and said it was all about the idol statue. The elves and wolves had lived in peace for many years, until 2 years ago, when she was doing an inspection, she discovered a black statue. It was in some lost cargo in the country kingdom. The black statue was lying in a box with its arms intertwined on its chest. There was a strange aura coming from it, so the girl put a seal on it. Only a mage stronger than her could unseal the statue. The guys stood beside each other. It looked like they had been attacked by ghostly wolf warriors. Each of them was shrouded in a strange red light, and their strength and speed increased by so much. It was as if they had gone mad. Before she lost consciousness, she saw the wolf shaman appear, holding the same statue in his hand. Fong asked where the idol statue had gone. Had the wolves taken it? The girl replied that she didn't know. At that moment she had woken up already in this dungeon. But she said that she could be sure that the wolf tribe had gotten hold of that evil power of the statues. Fong wondered about the angel statue. Was it really her fault for the mutation of the Tree of Life in the Twilight Village?